just tired of this live-action remake shit. But also, if you're gonna remake old movies, why not the ones that could actually use the roots? You know, stuff like Atlantis or Treasure Planet. God, that'd be so cool. Thankfully, though, I think that their latest one, Lilo and Stitch, actually looks pretty good. Like, listen, I loved Stitch as a kid. I was like 8 when the first one came out and thought it was great. The sequels were fun, the TV show was goated, the anime existed, and the core message of how family is most important, even if you aren't related by blood, it's timeless. But speaking of family, you know, I've really been thinking about adding to mine with a new pet. I moved last year to work with my Theorist fam, and I really missed having just like an adorable little guy running around. Growing up, I always had cats. And while I'll probably be getting another one in the near future, please leave your name suggestions in the comments. I will be using one of them. I think I also want something a little more exotic, something chaotic, something like, well, Stitch. I mean, come on, a cute little alien man.
Welcome to the live stream. This is it. I watch YouTube videos and work on some shit. And once in a while I'll pop in and actually check the comments.
Alas, there are a few minor issues with my dream of adopting my very own Stitch. Despite this being a live-action remake, Stitch isn't real. He's a CGI cartoon, and even in
we are maxed out on the entertainment right now. Fair warning.
Created by putting together the DNA of aliens from across the universe. And unfortunately for me, I don't have $150,000 lying around to go fly up in Jeff Bezos' rocket for 11 minutes to go find myself an alien life. So if I want a real-life Stitch, I have to figure out how to make one myself using what we got here on Earth. Yeah, it was created by splicing together the DNA of different aliens. Could we do the same with weird and wacky creatures we have here on Earth? Is this a dumb idea? Maybe. Is it even technically possible? Probably not. Do I care? Not one bit. I mean, listen, we've been hitting some heavy topics lately. I hope one that's fun and lighthearted. Not every theory needs to be over the top. But even then, believe me when I say that the hardest part of actually making a real-world Stitch isn't going to be what you expect. So get your plasma blasters locked and loaded, loyal theorists, as we embrace our inner mad scientist and figure out how to create our very own Experiment 626. So before we start this wild goose chase, I do want to say, though I joked about this not really being possible, creating our own hybrid animal might actually be possible in the future. If you keep up with science news or have just heard us talk about this on the channels before, you might remember something called CRISPR-Cas9. No, that's not a toaster oven or air fryer. It's actually a powerful technology that lets scientists edit genes. And, in theory, in genetic theory, it could even let scientists take the DNA from one creature and put it into the DNA of another. For example, back in 2023, scientists in China took the genes for creating spider silk, which is about 5 times stronger than steel, believe it or not, and put it into a silkworm. This let the silkworm make the stronger spider silk. So here's how we're going to turn our dream of making my very own Stitch into a reality. We're going to start with the base animal, and then for each of Stitch's wacky traits, we'll find a real-life animal with equally wacky traits, and then yoink that DNA using CRISPR. Easy peasy. By the end of it, we'll hopefully have created the perfect guy for my Ohana complete. So this now begs the question, what should our baseline animal be? Well, in Lilo and Stitch, Lilo and Nani adopt Stitch because they think he's a dog. But while he certainly has the loyalty of man's best friend, he absolutely does not look the part. He's got a shorter body, a bulbous nose, opposable claws. A more fitting template would be, well, Nani, what do you think?
I think it might be a koala. Evil koala.
And you know what? I agree. A koala is going to be a great template to serve as the starting point for our little experiment here. But of course, we're quite a bit away from turning this to this.
Hi. We've already got tons of WestJet points.
Yeah?
I'm voting.
Okay, I believe you.
Make it the all-new WestJet rewards. This. So let's break down exactly what we need for our Stitch to match the Disney one. Well, from where I'm sitting, it comes down to a few main traits. Stitch's look, his senses, and his strength. Let's start out with Stitch's look. And one of the big things I'm noticing right out the gates, he's got way more going on than just the ears, eyes, nose, and mouth of a regular mammal. Yeah, he's got these sort of like weird spines on his back and antenna on his head. Let's start there, and specifically with the spines on his back. A look at Stitch's design, you'll notice these 3 long spikes along his back. And according to a behind-the-scenes book produced for the first film, they're not just decorative, they're deadly. Yeah, the middle joint of Stitch's spine apparently houses venom sacs that give these spikes a venomous touch. This is actually a thing some species on Earth have. A deep-sea fish like lionfish and stonefish, which have venomous spikes as well. So
dogfish do as well.
If you wanted to. Yeah, since this is gonna be my pet, I think I'm just gonna make the big boy decision to skip this one. Now, Stitch might be a mishmash of a bunch of different creatures, right? It must have taken a lot of effort to stitch together. Almost like if you want to watch things from a ton of different streamers. But that would be a problem of the past thanks to NordVPN, the sponsor of today's theory. Guys,
There you go. Put them back under the heater to dry.
But you might not realize all the cool stuff you can do to make your life better. The biggest thing for me is what I just mentioned. I have to watch a ton of stuff, not only for my job, but just because I love movies and TV. And it's always such a pain to track down what is streaming where. But with NordVPN, I can put my internet connection into thinking it's coming from a different state, or even a different country. Just one click and bam! All of a sudden, I have access to all of what that country has to offer on their different streamers. Like, if you're an American like me, you could pay for both Disney Plus and Hulu, or if you're a smart cookie, you could instead get NordVPN, hop on a server up in Canada, and get most of Hulu's
Could be more faces.
additional charge.
That's an
We're talking
option.
everything from Family Ties, Aliens, Feature Bumps,
Be babies.
so
Tiny little dinosaur skeleton. Oh my goodness. And I could do that. That's an idea.
All risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Once
Alright, it's gonna get real boring here in a minute.
Just click the link in the description. Thanks again to Nord, and let's head back to Hawaii to check on our Stitch. Moving up to Stitch's head, though, what's the deal with these antennae? Yeah, in the insect world, antennae are used to touch, smell, and even hear everything around them. Which we'll get to in a second. Antennae come in a variety of shapes and sizes.
I just see the
Even though
base.
Stitch's antennae get thicker near the tips, I'd say they most resemble the ones found on butterflies, moths, and beetles. We can pretty much go with any of these options you'd like to for Stitch, so we're just going to go with monarch butterfly, because I like them. Speaking of bugs, you might have noticed that Stitch has another quirk that's a bit bug-like. He has 6 limbs. Interestingly, despite how useful it would be to have an extra set of arms, there aren't any vertebrates, that's animals with spines like you and me, that normally have 6 limbs. But, of course, many insects do have 6 or more limbs. So, while we're adding in some bug DNA for the antenna, maybe we should splice in some genes to give our Stitch the ability to play co-op games by himself. But that's a little easier said than done. Why? Well, the
Yeah,
number
but
of
it's a
arms
little
and
easier
legs
said than
isn't
done.
exactly a gene that we can find. So we're gonna have to get a little bit creative. See, while there might not be a gene for how many legs you have, many animals do have what is known as Hox genes. These are super important in early development and making sure that your head is on straight. Literally. Hox genes are basically kind of like blueprints. They maintain the body plan for, well, your body. They make sure that your head, arms, and legs are all in the right spot while you're developing. Each section of the body gets its own set of Hox genes, and when these genes are damaged, some pretty wacky things can happen, like this fruit fly, who you'll notice has a leg growing out where an antenna should be. So what does that mean for our Stitch? Well, this would be the best chance for us to make sure that he has 6 limbs. If we can go into Stitch's Hox genes using our CRISPR technology and just copy the section of his genes responsible for arms,
This was easier in my head, like most things.
So maybe
Let's see
there's no
now.
actual data on if this would work or not, but hey, it's worth a shot. But speaking of limbs, we should talk about this too. Yeah, one big thing that Stitch is able to do is store extra appendages back into his body. Why couldn't you just make this easy, buddy? After doing a deep dive into the research, I wasn't able to find any example of an animal that can just suck limbs back into themselves. Like at first I thought we could be getting somewhere with the turtle, but they work differently. So again, I had to get creative. And you know what? There are some close alternatives. Meet the peanut worm. This gross little guy lives at the bottom of the ocean and is able to extend this arm thing out of its mouth. It can use to find food in the ground. Now that would definitely work for us, but we might not even need to get that gross or even go to the bottom of the ocean for this. If we want something way closer to home, we can just look at some other furry friends, and specifically cats. Yeah, hear me out. Cat claws work in a very specific way. See, cats have muscles and tendons in their feet that, similar to Stitch, let them extend and retract their claws into their bodies at will. While retracting, the muscles even kind of look like rubber bands that pull and fold the claw back into the claw. And if we look at that art book from earlier, the description they give for how Stitch's arms retract looks pretty similar. So yeah, let's go with the DNA of our feline friends instead of that gross ocean worm for this one. Okay, so that's all good, but listen up because now it's time to look at Stitch's ears. Yeah, Stitch's big floppy ears aren't just for show. We actually see in the first movie that he has incredible hearing, and he's straight up able to hear whispers from dozens or even hundreds of feet away.
Well, what's he doing?
right, he's listening for us. How good is his hair? Now, if we're looking for ears that look the part and can pick up sound with the best of them, well, I hear there's no better choice than the Finnick Fox. Finnick Fox ears measure around 4 to 5 inches and are the longest relative to body size in the entire dog family. These bad boys are
Get
so
over there.
sensitive
I'm tired
to
of
areas
this right
that
now.
foxes can actually
I need an
hear
easier
their
answer.
underground. So if we give our Stitch a nice pair of Finnick Fox ears, we won't be able to open up a bag of chips anywhere in the tri-state area without him finding out and coming to beg for some. So far, I'd say that our Stitch is now looking the part, but what about how he actually, well, looks? I mean, like, with his eyes. Yeah, we already worked out his hearing, but Stitch also
Okay,
has some truly
let's do
amazing
some
features
upgrades.
that can do it all. He can magnify
So I got this
objects.
guy.
He's got night vision. He can see in infrared, and he's even got X-ray vision. Yeah, his eyes are good. Too good, in fact.
Oh,
Fun
there's
fact,
the end.
X-ray vision isn't
Wrong
actually
side.
possible in the real world because X-rays don't bounce the same way that visible light does. Eyes, as we know them,
Alright, this guy's
see them
boring. I
because
need
the
something
light can't
extra.
bounce off our eyes, no matter how good they are. So,
Thinking
sadly,
something with
we
the
will have to
stomachs. Let's see if I got
scratch
some
that
ribs
first.
that'll fit.
Secondly, while each of these other powers can be found here on Earth, there's no animal with a single pair of eyes that can do it all. But that's okay. Remember, we're stitching together genes from multiple species anyway, so we can make our Stitch see it all. For zooming in, we can give our Stitch eyes like a hawk. But literally, while not able to zoom in and out like your phone camera, hawks and other similar birds like eagles do have multiple focal lengths inside of their eyes. That basically means they have different parts of their eyes that have different levels of focus, which would more or less and kind of zoom in. This is how they're able to pick out rabbits from thousands of feet up while they're out hunting. But what about when things get hawk and eagle eyes aren't merely going to be as sharp then, so we'll have to pick up some DNA
That's
from our
fine.
friend Mr. Owl, too. Owl eyes are very and filled with tons of what are known as rod cells, the kind of eye cells that are very good at detecting low light. Basically, the more rods inside of your eyes, the more light is able to get in, even when it's dark. That means that owls, and therefore our earthling Stitch, can find prey even in low light, even in the dead of night. Now, that leaves the final piece of this vision puzzle being seeing infrared light. If you don't know, humans are only able to see colors in a very narrow band of what light actually exists. This is called visible light, and it's the classic Roy G. Biv stuff you learned about in school. But just outside of that range, you have ultraviolet, which means above violet light, and infrared, which means below red light. Now, while you and me can't see those colors, some animals can, including the most unlikely animal of all, the key to finishing out Stitch's eyesight, the goldfish. Yeah,
I didn't
I'm
know
not kidding. Turns out that out of all the animals out there, goldfish are among the few that can see both infrared and ultraviolet light. So combining the zoom and enhancement of the hawk, the night vision of the owl, and the broad color vision of the goldfish, ain't nothing getting past our Stitch's eyes. Now, if you thought his sight and sound made Stitch superhuman, you ain't seen nothing yet. There's one ability that Stitch has that's second to none. His incredible strength.
Going for an ant for that one.
I had to see what the hype was about. I got Pilates board with Kevin. We do so many different workouts with this.
Ooh.
There's everything you need to do a full body workout, and when you're done, it simply falls away for easy storage. Don't forget to use the code on screen when shopping at Tecmo.
Y'all want to hear something absolutely wild?
More than 48% of content creators are making less than $15,000 a year. You could not live by that in 1 year.
But the game has
No, but it'd be a nice little
completely changed
add-on.
because of many chat funnels. So what does this actually look like? The first step is we have people post a word underneath one of our videos. We give away an herb course. So we would have course, as the keyword. And then we send them
This car right here is a Volkswagen Beetle, which would weigh roughly 2,050 pounds, or almost 930 kilograms, and Stitch is picking it up and tossing it around like it's a basketball. So how strong would Stitch be exactly? Well, check this out.
Yes, you can go 3,000 times your own weight, but not an ounce more.
Yeah, we know that Stitch can lift 3,000 times his own body weight, and we see just how much he's picking up right here. So let's do the math. In this scene, we see Stitch holding up 2 bulldozers. Small bulldozers can weigh about 17,000 pounds each. So doing some basic back-of-the-napkin math and accounting for those steel beams too, we can figure out that Stitch weighs roughly 12 pounds or 5.4 kilograms. And hey, that checks out, since we see Lilo able to actually lift Stitch herself. So, okay, how are we possibly going to get our Stitch to be this strong? I mean, after all, being able to lift 3,000 times your own body weight
If you
is
wash them,
crazy.
maybe it'll come out.
Ants to shame, since they can only carry a measly 10 to 50 times their own body weight. Well, the explanation for Stitch's insane strength is that his muscles contain huge amounts of myofibrils. Those are basically the strings inside of your muscles that actually do the contracting when you flex those sick guns. So if Stitch's muscles are super dense with these, that would explain his super strength despite his noodle arms. And thankfully, there is an animal that would be the perfect candidate for these highly packed muscles. The gorilla. Yeah, these guys are notoriously so strong because they have tons of myofibrils inside of their muscles. I mean, obviously it's not enough for them to lift 3,000 times their own body weight, but it's a cartoon. What are we gonna do? And just the cherry on top here, gorillas actually have trouble swimming partially because their bodies are so much more dense than a human's. And who else does that sound like?
What is that? Water. Most of the planet is covered in it.
He won't survive in water. His molecular density is too great.
Yeah, despite living in Hawaii and occasionally surfing, Stitch can't swim. It's like his big weakness. So his muscles being packed with myofibrils more than a gorilla, it all just lines up. I do wonder who'd win in a fight, though. 100 gorillas or one Stitch? And at this point, we've spliced up this koala with DNA from everything from a fennec fox, a butterfly, hawk, owl, goldfish, gorilla. We even duplicated his arms. And still, that doesn't cover every single thing we see throughout this franchise, like turning into a ball like an armadillo, or a sense of smell comparable to a wolf. But all of that, it's easy to come by, not at all a challenge to put in. But, well, here's the thing. There is one last thing our real Stitch is missing, and it comes back down to his look. Yeah, okay, I strategically left this out when talking about that because while doing my research, it was surprisingly hard to find animals that fit this. And what was this incredibly difficult trait to find? Well, believe it or not, Stitch's color is blue fur. Yeah, I'm serious. See, while it's not unique in the world of animated mascots, blue is one of the rarest color pigments found in nature. Blue dye used to be super valuable in ancient times because it was so hard to find stuff to actually make it. And animals don't exactly evolve to look blue most of the time. And even the ones that a lot of them aren't actually blue. This is probably most true for mammals, which is what our Stitch is based on. Sure, a quick Google search will show you things like the blue monkey, which are native to sub-Saharan Africa. That sounds promising, but unfortunately, despite the name and the fact that they look kind of blue in the right light, these monkeys are actually more of a dark gray. In fact, I couldn't find any mammals that had any blue fur like Stitch, so we had to go looking elsewhere. Now, I hear you saying, but Lee, what about like blue jays? They're blue, right? And hey, good shout. You might think so, but technically, blue jays aren't actually blue either. Yeah, really. Blue jay feathers mostly contain the pigment melanin, a blackish brown pigment. This is the same stuff that gives human hair and skin its color. Wait, so if blue jay wings have brown pigments, why do they look blue? Well, that's due to the unique way light scatters off the surface of the feather. It just makes them appear blue, even though the feather doesn't actually have any blue pigments. And listen, I know if this sounds nitpicky, I get it, but this is my Stitch, and if he's gonna be blue, I want him to actually be blue, okay? And to find something that's like actually blue, we had to get weird. Some fish and other animals like can sometimes be blue, but the best, most consistent option I found? Introducing the Blue Star. Yeah, this is like Patrick Starr's blue cousin. This little guy is also known as Lynchia livigata because his body mostly contains a pigment known as Lynchia cyanin. Hey, I see what you did there. It has cyan in the name. And just looking at this thing, well, it's about as blue can be, and as blue as I want my Stitch to be. So let's get its DNA, combine it with the rest, and bam! We've made our Stitch. Yeah, let's take a look at this adorable little monstrosity we made. We've pulled DNA and genes from everything from cats to koalas, and gorillas to seahorses, even hawks and butterflies. And you know what? As much as I wanted an alien pet like Stitch, all of this has made me realize just how incredible the animals here on our planet are. Just how diverse the animal kingdom is with these creatures each evolving in such cool, specific ways. I don't think we really need animals to make something cool and special in our Disney Frankenstein labs. What we really need is issues of zoo books. You know, maybe I will just stick with the cat. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And cut. Up next on Film Theory.
I thought there was a limited amount of space on DNA strands anyway, so if you take something out, you'd have to... You put something in, you have to take something out. But that could just be the anime talking.
This dumpling has now ruined you for all future dumplings.
Clay softener.
Explore over 40 Michelin-starred restaurants within our world of hotel brands. It feels great when it's clean. The new Vileda H2 Pro and
Jesus fuck, let go!
Sprays clean water, wipes clean, and the dirt goes into a separate tank. The new H2 Pro system from Vileda.
need to know about the Book of Bill. With the new year upon us, the ARG still ongoing, and Gravity Falls clearly ramping up for something new, I wanted to take all of our speculation, theorizing, ARG solving, everything we've done for the Book of Bill so far and put it in one place for your convenience. And of course, I couldn't resist also tossing in a couple new mini theories too, but you'll have to watch them to see for yourselves.
This is entertaining, isn't it?
To the Gravity Falls subreddit and Discord, as well as the other awesome theorists here on YouTube that all work their butts off decoding the Book of Bill and this ARG. Y'all crushed it, and we couldn't have done this without you. Hello, Internet. This time, you're on your own. Actually, no. No, you're not. Hello, Internet. Welcome to Film Theory, where that some sunny day is finally here. Yeah, you know what that means. The one-eyed triangular 2D demon, Bill Cipher, has returned to wreak havoc on the world of Gravity Falls. Well, sort of. If you don't know, Gravity Falls was an animated series on Disney XD created by mystery mastermind and theorist champ Alex Hirsch. The show is about twins Dipper and Mabel Pines, who spent summer vacation with their grunkle Stan in the small town of Gravity Falls, Oregon. Here, they encounter all sorts of mysteries and codes and cryptids, gnomes that kidnap kids, and killer animatronics before they were cool. But most importantly, they help defeat Bill Cipher, a demon from the second dimension
Soak,
of
I think,
godlike
for a while.
powers who was hell-bent on conquering the world. This show was built from the ground up for theorizing, something Matt pointed out multiple times throughout the series and why I've been so excited to cover it. Along with FNAF in the MCU, Gravity Falls was one of the shows that really drove an entire generation of theorists. So when Disney announced the Book of Bill, a new addition to the Gravity Falls canon written by Alex Hirsch himself, I couldn't wait to get my grubby little theorist hands on it.
This is just leaking out, so I might as well add it to the pot.
See, unlike a lot of other shows from the same period, like Adventure Time or Steven Universe, there wasn't a lot of Gravity Falls. It got in, told its story in 2
This
seasons,
is like
and then
over
ended.
10 years old.
Desperately wanted more of it, which is why people are so hyped for this book. It's promised to show us more of this world and its characters, and let me tell you, friends, this thing is dense. We learn so much about
What's
this
that?
world, about its history and lore, secrets
one?
about each of our main characters, and about Bill himself. And that's without cracking any of the mysteries and codes inside. You guys have been asking us to cover this book for weeks at this point, and believe me, we've heard you. We've been working on this in the background and wanted to make sure we approached it right. And just to be upfront here, friends, there's a lot here. So much in this book and the surrounding media and ARG that there's no way this won't be at least 2 episodes. So today, for this theory, we're just going to be looking at the contents of the Book of Bill itself and what it tells us about the future of this franchise. But don't you worry, it tells us a lot about the future of Gravity Falls. The main thing? Well, it's spelled out clearly in this book in bold, underlined letters. But Bill Cipher is alive. He survived the events of Weirdmageddon, and that might mean the doom of the entire multiverse. But, well, someone's looking out for us. Shake my hand, friends. It's time to get weird. So, probably first thing we should mention about the Book of Bill is that it canonically originates within the Gravity Falls universe, like the literal physical book itself. It's a tool that Bill uses to psychically link with the reader, and it haunted Ford over in Gravity Falls until he got sick of it and threw it into a dimensional rift left behind by Weirdmageddon. It then ended up in our world, where finds it and is offered a deal by Bill Cipher. Also, just want to say, in the lore and story of this world, Alex Hirsch must have found this book first, and that confirms our previous theory during Matt's retirement party that he was possessed by Bill Cipher. The author blue on the back of the book sleeve reads, "Hi friends, I'm Alex Hirsch, creator of Gravity Town, and I'm definitely not possessed by a demon right now." And on it goes. Alex then assures us that he's definitely fine and is not calling out. He thinks the author doesn't protest too much. Regardless, the book is in our world now, and it's literally infecting other books, while also summoning Bill to broker an agreement with us, let's say. Yeah, he offers us a deal. He'll tell us all about his backstory, but in exchange, we'll owe him a favor somewhere down the road. It's at this point that we're given a choice to say yes or no, and man, I got excited. I thought this was going to be one of those awesome sort of choose-your-own-adventure books, so naturally, as someone aware of Bill's shenanigans, this? I said no and flipped to the page it specified, and, well, there was some very small text upside down on the top of the page. It basically told me that not shaking Bill's hand meant that I was going to live out the rest of my life in the most boring way possible. As a middle manager at a mustard factory in Idaho with 4 children, Purvis, Horvin, Borley, and Smunt. Poor Smunt. Unreal. I am absolutely the sort of person that would name like a cat Smunt, and I apologize to my future cat because, well, your name is Smunt. Okay, so it really seems like if you want all of the new juicy lore in this book, we need to agree to Bill's terms. And hey, well, I've sold my soul for less. We agreed to this deal, and whoa! In one of the coolest bits of meta storytelling I've ever seen in this sort of product, Bill starts laughing maniacally and literally rips his way through the book into our reality. Honestly, it's really slick stuff and a bit terrifying, and though you might expect Bill to immediately kill us here and move on, nah, he doesn't. He actually keeps up his end of the bargain, and then some. The content of the book becomes super varied, bouncing between sections that look like magazines, Q&As with Bill about the concept of love, a how-to guide on how to get into heaven. It's mysteriously blank, so immediately you get what Bill thinks about that idea. There are tons of hidden codes that you'll need to decipher if you want the whole story, and there's even just straight-up excerpts ripped from a book called The Great Gatsby. This was a novel by F. Scott Fitzgerald that everybody had to read in like the 7th grade, which just entered the public domain a couple of years ago. So hey, why not? It's still weird, but why not? But a couple of my favorite sections. Well, first off, there's a whole section talking about urban legends and cryptids that look like they're ripped straight out of some analog horror here on YouTube. There's Slender Man, who lies about people. Guillermo
Slender Man,
who has a passion for cinema and has written a script for National Treasure 4. The Off Model, which is a monster that looks like bootleg IP and would just like legitimately be a good monster for this sort of analog horror. Can we make that? And the Mirror Dimension that contains monsters like Bloody Mary, Dysmorphio, and David Lynch. Yes, as in film director David Lynch. I am losing my gosh dang mind because this is hilarious and exactly the sort of humor just made for me. Then there's a whole section about the concept of morality, which Bill believes is 100% flexible, and that karma is a scam. He's immediately hit in the eye by a paper airplane after he says that, so I mean, you be the judge of whether or not he's
yeah, I didn't need that much paint, did I?
The whole reason that I'm pointing this out is that he gives us, the reader, a moral test here. On this page, he's imprisoned an elf named Scrimbles with bones made of glass. If we turn the page and continue on our journey to learn all about the new lore, we'll crush Scrimbles and he'll die. That's hilariously dark and, well, I mean, sorry Scrimbles, there's lore to uncover. Forgive me. We also get some new lore about the Pines family. There's a whole section dedicated to the missing pages of Journal 3 and Ford's earliest interactions with Bill, and another where Bill talks about the dreams of many of the main characters, including Dipper. Bill explains that Dipper has a recurring nightmare about overhearing a fight between his parents that he wasn't supposed to hear, before wondering why Dipper and Mabel got sent to Gravity Falls for the summer on such short notice. Yeah, that's pretty dark, implying that this whole series only exists because their marriage was falling apart. Their parents needed Dipper and Mabel out of the house while they worked out what to do. Ouch, that one hits right in the feels. But okay, that was a lot of the fun, weird, and dark stuff here in the book. What's the real meat and potatoes, though? Where's the real lore? Well, again, true to his word, Bill tells us exactly where he comes from. Bill explains that he's from a world called Euclidia, where no one could comprehend the third dimension, but he was born with a mutation that lets him see into the third dimension. This was apparently cursed and forbidden knowledge. Bill claims that talking about the third dimension was illegal in his world. Despite this, Bill still wanted to share the truth with the rest of his people, but, well, we're not sure what happened, and neither is Bill. He says that he heard a loud buzzing and that he blacked out, and that he still does whenever he thinks about this, but when he came to, no one was alive in his universe except for him. He killed them all. Now, in this very explanation, Bill says that he's not some misunderstood character that can be humanized by a tragic backstory, but I'm not so sure about that. Like, don't get me wrong, Bill is a bad guy, an awful person, and definitely a villain, but I'm not so sure he ended up that way all on his own. At the beginning of this section, we see Bill bursting through a wall behind a TV with a strange symbol on it. Well, this is actually from the cover of a story called Flatland, written by Edwin Abbott Abbott, and Flatland, a two-dimensional square is visited by a three-dimensional sphere who teaches him to look outside of his perspective. And once the square learns about the third dimension, he tries to convince his fellow 2D shapes, but is jailed for what is considered madness. Perhaps something similar happened here with Bill, with some multi-dimensional being enlightening Bill and sending him down his villainous path. Regardless, the result is the same. Bill ended up killing everyone in Euclidia and moved on to a new universe. From here, Bill found himself in the Nightmare Dimension, where he formed a band of ne'er-do-wells called the Henchmaniacs to help him get up to all sorts of shenanigans. We actually know most of these characters from the actual show. For 1 trillion years, they robbed banks together, crashed planets together to make them kiss, conquered dynasties, and even recorded a Christmas album. But not all good things can last. Eventually, the Nightmare Realm came apart at the seams as entropy caught up with the universe and destroyed it. Bill then ended up in the series from the universe and was drawn to the area that would someday become Gravity Falls, where he met a shaman who created the prophecy of the 10 cosmic symbols from the series and banished Bill from the area. From here, Bill traveled the world and encountered different societies, the Aztecs, and the Egyptians, and the indigenous people of Easter Island. He also explains that Atlantis was real and apparently existed around the time of King Henry VIII. Seems like a major lore drop there, and I really want to know the implications of the whole world just like forgetting Atlantis was a thing, where it was, and how it sank. Fast forwarding past the events of Gravity Falls and Weirdmageddon, it's revealed that Bill did in fact survive being erased along with Stan's memories. He made a deal with the great Axolotl, who promised to let Bill live if he could overcome his greatest trial. The most dangerous thing Bill could possibly face: therapy. Yeah, really, the Axolotl sends Bill to a dimension outside of time called the Theraprism, where he has to make up for all of his cosmic crimes. Goes around, comes around, huh? Regardless, this book is actually a project that Bill is working on while in therapy, and he smuggled it out of the Theraprism and into our reality against the rules of the institution. But Bill signs off the book by promising that someday he will get out. Someone will let him out, and we might have an idea just who that is. At the very, very end of the book, I'm talking like the last couple pages, we see a picture of the Bill Cipher statue in the woods from the end of the series. However, if we turn the page,
The Scotties you know, but even softer. New Scotties Ultra Soft.
we see that same statue again, but its eye has started glowing. Why would the statue suddenly come to life here? Well, zoom in and look at his hand. A bird is perching on it. Has this bird shaken Bill's hand and unwittingly agreed to become his new host just by looking for a place to land? Maybe. Yeah. In the days leading up to the Book of Bill's release, a Twitter account called the Oregon Parks Department opened as a viral marketing campaign and included pictures of a bird known as the Western Meadowlark. Look at this thing. This is a real bird that is the spitting image of Bill Cipher. The yellow chest even has a little black top hat shape at the top. This little birdie might have just given Bill Cipher the wings he needed to fly out of the Theraprism and back into the world of Gravity Falls once again. So, yeah, that's the story of the Book of Bill, and a small hint to where things might be going. But that's just the topmost layer. We've already touched on a few of them, but this book is packed with additional secrets hidden if you read between the lines, and codes to crack that let us know so much more about this world. For instance, the Book of Bill confirms that there's a Gravity Fall multiverse in play here. In the Parallel Dimensions section, Bill points out just how improbable it was that Dipper and Mabel survived all of the events of the show without getting erased, drowned, frozen, or dismembered. But that's only because we're in the only timeline where that didn't happen. Yeah, and basically every other one, Dipper and Mabel die horrible deaths at the hands of all the freaky stuff from the series. What's more, the entirety of this
I need to
multiverse
finish
is
something.
actually contained within a Pokemon card. Like, literally a Pokemon card in the backpack of an unfathomable being outside time named Dennis. Considering that our universe is part of this Gravity Falls multiverse, that means that we too are part of this Pokemon card. And it's not even Shadow. That's tragic. Oh, and speaking of, on this page explaining the Pokemon card multiverse, if you look closely, you'll see a series of symbols running down the side of the card. This is obviously a cipher, and when you decode it, it reads, "Warning, holding this card may result in crossovers." That, in and of itself, is a fun nod to the amount of multiversal crossovers we've gotten in the past few years, but there's actually a lot of crossovers hidden in this very book that create a really wide Disney cartoon cinematic universe. For instance, a Titan skull from the Owl House, another series that Alex Hirsch worked on, can be found in this section about the Dark Ages, while there's another rune cipher in that same section that translates to Titan blood. Later on, the Core's helmet from Amphibia can be seen in the Theraprism alongside Bill, and finally, early on in the Bill Tells All section, Bill is asked if he's the biological father of Phineas from Phineas and Ferb, before ending the interview. Phineas's triangle head suddenly makes a lot more sense, doesn't it? Regardless, all of this alongside Matt's previous theory that Rick and Morty also takes place in this same multiverse really means that there's a giant web of animation that's all connected here. Might just need to do a theory about that sometime, huh? Now, a lot of the hidden codes and mysteries in here are fun, like this Pokemon card connection, but others, well, not so much. Some of them are crazy complicated and hint at a darker story for Bill, one filled with regret and sorrow. For example, there's a code hidden in one of the pages in the Barnes & Noble edition of the book. Yeah, if you didn't know, Barnes & Noble had an exclusive version of the Book of Bill which had additional content, something that none of us here at Fierce realized until we'd already gotten our copies off of Amazon. Thank God for overnight shipping. Regardless, in the messages on your TV section in the Barnes & Noble edition, at the very bottom of the page, you'll notice a series of square color blocks. At first, I thought this was just a weird, glitchy effect to really drive home the analog nature of this page, with the scan lines and chromatic aberration and all the VHS goodness. But there's actually a pattern to these colors. Yeah, they correspond to letters of the alphabet, and if you decode the right order, it spells out the message: he never sleeps, he never dreams, but somehow still he hears their screams. This has to be about Bill. He isn't sleeping or dreaming, but he's still haunted by the screams of everyone he's killed. This is further driven home on the page covered in Silly Straws. There's a line of digits that all correspond with episodes of Gravity Falls and time codes within them. When the words spoken at these time codes are all strung together, we get this message. Family. If that was a bit hard to follow, it says, twisted out of shape after the kill, the ghosts of his family are haunting him still. The memory of his parents, his original homeworld, are still haunting Bill, even after all these trillions of years. Also, we actually learned the name of his parents through another code in this book, and this has to be one of the most creative ciphers that I've ever encountered in my time here at Theorist. On the codes page, despite Bill insisting that there are no codes in this book, you'll notice a ring of letters carved into the tree here on this page. That might seem a bit random at first, but these letters line up perfectly with something else in the book. All throughout the pages, sometimes there are copy ring stains that are a perfect size to fit inside this ring of letters. And there are gaps in the rings that line up with individual letters. And not only that, but there are other stains, little dots around the gaps that tell us the order of the letters here. If you spell out all of the letters from the rings and put them in the correct order here, it makes a new message that reads, his dimension now deceased, Scalene and Euclid, rest in peace. A scalene is a type of triangle with sides and angles of all different lengths and degrees, while Euclid was an ancient Greek mathematician with expertise in geometry. These are the names of Bill's parents, the ones that still haunt his dreams, the ones who he can still hear the screams of. That is so dark and so cool, and one of the best puzzles I've ever encountered in a book like this. Seriously, a clap and a half for Alex here. But for as cool as that is, something's weird here, right? A lot of the codes in this book are written by Bill himself, and you can tell when they are. He has his own very specific way of speaking and his own rune cipher that is consistent for his character. But a lot of these, they don't sound like Bill. Or they're talking about Bill. No, someone else is writing codes in here, and there are a few options. Who it is might end up being very important that Bill is truly coming back through that bird. First option? Well, the clear and obvious choice would be the axolotl. He's already shown to be more powerful than Bill, enough to put him in therapy, so maybe he's trying to help Bill work through some stuff. But that's also the most obvious option and the most boring. The second and less obvious option? Well, it could be the people that he's possessed over the years. Yeah, for real. We learn in the book that Bill isn't alone inside of his head. At the bottom of the page about skin, there's a section that gets cut off because learning is fun. But it's not what you'd expect. Instead of more factoids about skin, we're shown a cry for help from someone named Redley Himberdreck of Zimtrix 5, one of thousands of souls that Bill has consumed over the years. It's not entirely clear how this would happen, but I think it's a pretty safe guess to say that these souls Bill consumed were the people that he's made deals with. And now they're stuck inside of Bill's mind, where he plays Good Vibrations by Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch on loop forever. That's Mark Wolpert's previous career, by the way. He was a rapper. This also tells me that Alex Hirsch and I have a very similar sense of humor, because I died laughing when I read this and immediately went and listened to the song. As a wise man once said, I want to get mine, so get yours. I'm going to see sweat coming out your pores. Regardless, we see here that one of these characters was able to take the wheel away from Bill enough to write this blurb. Perhaps they're also writing these secret codes and will help us fight Bill when he comes back. Or
They do Cyclops. Actually, that's not a bad idea.
Option number 3, Bill's ex-girlfriend. All throughout the book, Bill makes a point to avoid any questions about his own romantic history. In the love section, he redacts a couple of lines before exclaiming that his ex-partners were not relevant because I don't have any. Yeah, sure, Bill, sure. Later, while introducing his crew of pinch maniacs, one of them is completely scribbled out in red marker with a big label saying, not important. If you look through the red marker, you can barely make out that the character's name is Jessie, and her art looks like she has a lot of eyes. Maybe 7 of them. If that doesn't mean anything to you, fair. But if you devoured Journal 3 when it released like we here at Theorists did, you'll recognize that this character looks and sounds a lot like a character known as the Oracle. This is a 7-eyed woman named Jessel Brom the Unswerving, a name that could easily be shortened to Jessie. A character that Bill clearly doesn't want us to think about because she is his ex-girlfriend. That would explain why Jessie didn't show up in Weirdmageddon. If she and Bill broke up on bad terms, enough so that Bill wants to scrub her out of his own history, yeah, she wouldn't want to show up for that. Maybe she's the one who is writing these codes about Bill's regrets, something that she would know as his ex-partner, trying to help us find a way to beat him in the future. To me, that is the most exciting option. Jessie coming back and trying to help defeat her evil ex once and for all. But we'll just have to wait and see. So yeah, all in all, that's the story and the codes hidden in the Book of Bill. It's a lot, and there are puzzles and ciphers here that go even deeper. There's weird choices that might not make a lot of sense if you read this book with zero context. Like, for real, I mentioned this earlier, but there are just straight up several pages ripped from The Great Gatsby republished in here. Strange, right? Well, there was a reason for that. One that starts us down a whole new rabbit hole. Let me explain. After we accept Bill's offer at the beginning of the book, it sort of resets, and we're given a new cover and a new page full of all the publishing information of the book. All of this information is now themed around Bill, and at the bottom of the page, we're encouraged to visit thisisnotawebsite.com. If you did that early on, like right after the book was released, you were asked for a password. What was this password? Well, early on in the book, we're given the One True Intelligence test, and one of the puzzles just looked like a bunch of random lines and squiggles. And if you look physically at this image at an extreme angle, the lines form into words and gives you this message. Need a password? Fine, I'll talk. It's the name of the Eyeball Doc. And guess what? The pages of The Great Gatsby talk about the Eyeball Doctor, T.J. Eckelberg. Type T.J. Eckelberg into the website, and bam, a whole new world is opened up for us to explore. Okay, so what exactly is thisisnotawebsite.com? When the website was first discovered and this password entered, if you clicked on Seuss, he'd even change up what he was saying, offering links to a full copy of The Great Gatsby and some Gravity Falls themed lo-fi. A lot of people thought that this was part of the ARG, and it might have been. However, Alex Hirsch quickly took to Twitter explaining that sometimes technical difficulties are just technical difficulties. If I were to guess, they were seen. But eventually, those technical difficulties difficulties were ironed out, and the website relaunched, this time featuring a desk within the Mystery Shack complete with haunting music, ambient rain, and a glitchy computer just begging to be toyed with. A ton of the things on this desk are actually interactable. For example, if you click on the book of Bill here with the dagger in it, it'll open up the book and give us a note for Dipper written by Uncle Ford, telling us that he was mining the book for secrets before chucking it into a bottomless pit. That must have been the portal that let it end up in our reality, where Alex Hirsch got his hands on it and put Bill on the path to the bestsellers list. I guess that this also means that since the book is here in this website in the Mystery Shack, I suppose that this means that this canonically takes place before we get our copies of the book. Hopefully Time Baby isn't going to hunt us down for breaking the timeline. Before we move on, there are a few other treats hidden in this scene too. Like for instance, if you click on the skull's golden tooth, you're given one get out of death free coupon only for use in participating realities. And clicking on the bottle with the eyeball in it will give you a snapshot of the interdimensional portal. And Bill was right, that was very difficult to say out loud. Regardless, this was another portal constructed by dolphins, but unfortunately for Bill, it didn't work out. Porpoises don't got no opposable thumbs. And finally, clicking the McGucket logo on the computer gives us a note left behind by Old Man McGucket. In case you need a refresher, this guy was a surprisingly big player in Gravity Falls. He was a hillbilly who was once a genius, but he voluntarily scrambled his brain after witnessing Bill's antics in the Nightmare Realm firsthand. And now, it looks like his old computer is the key to solving this ARG. You see, you can actually type words into this computer, and if it matches something in the computer's database, you're given a clue or an Easter egg.
How did I get inside this computer? How do I get out of here? Bill!
Now, there's a lot of stuff you can type in here, but we're not going to be doing a comprehensive breakdown. If you're looking for that, there are tons of great videos here on YouTube from creators like Hannah Hyperfixates that do a great job of breaking it all down. So for us here today, we're just going to be focusing on a few key codes, and some that I just kind of thought were funny. Like, I'm not above entering Mabel up 11 billion times and Mabelizing the whole lab. Just makes it feel more like home, you know? Plus, this is where you get Matt's cameo on the website, therefore making all of us theorists here canon in Gravity Falls. Hello, Internet.
You're on your own.
Just still blows my mind. So where do we even start here? Well, using McGucket's note as a jumping off point, there are a couple of passcodes we can try that are hidden in there. One of those consequence is Goodnight Sally, and it starts us down a ridiculous rabbit hole. This code pulls up an image of a yellow graphic with Bill dancing while the church burns down in the background. Fun, but there's more hidden in this image than first meets the eye. If you zoom in on Bill's left shoe, the one that's outstretched, you may notice a series of small dots and dashes running along the edge of the shoe sole. This is, of course, Morse code, and it spells out Deonarap. That's paranoid backwards. Then, if you type in Deonarap to the computer, we get a conspiracy board that would make even Pepe Sylvia proud. There's a lot to take in here.
Where's the thread and needle I just had?
Kennedy assassination, had links to inventor Nikola Tesla, and Russian mystic Rasputin, was literally the iceberg that sank the Titanic, and is the reason that the Bermuda Triangle is so funky. Also, you just gotta love Bill's apparent belief that Doritos are a, quote, crude attempt at mockery. That one earned a legit guffaw from me. I love this page.
I think I've listened to this one a couple of times now.
There's actually a clever puzzle hidden here. All throughout the conspiracy board, you'll notice some strange groupings of letters. An OC here and EHT there. Well, if you find them all and put them all together, it makes the phrase Stad et Tinnock. That's connect the dots backwards. Now, I'll admit I spent an embarrassingly long amount of time trying to connect the dots here on the page to actually make something work before I realized it's just another code. Type that backwards phrase into the website, and once again, you're given a treasure trove of new information. Pretty simple pattern here. This is a chapter of a fictional book called Lesser-Known American Cults. It tells us about cyphertologists, described as the first cult in history that was right. By possessing the body of snake oil salesman Silas Birchtree, Bill was able to build himself a following as he turned to the city of Orchard Lake, Kansas into Billville. Here, his followers started to build him a portal before the plan was foiled by a rebel named Emmeline Butternubbins. Yes, Butternubbins. I continue to be in awe of Hirsch's ability to name things. Regardless, this chapter ends with a message hidden in Cypher's special alphabets. Translated, it reads, "You can't kill an idea," and typing that into the computer gives us a pamphlet for cyphertologists. Now, this might just seem like the end of this particular rabbit hole, but just put a pin in that. Another rabbit hole we can dive down involves us just typing in the word riddle. This brings up a screen that just asks us, would you like to play a game? Suddenly we are in Saw.
Do you want to play a game?
Of course, you know us, we are absolutely up for this. If you type in yes
Oh,
to answer it,
fuck.
you're again
What
asked
happened?
a question. This time, what's
God,
McGucket's favorite
motherfucker.
soda? This answer is actually found back in the Book of Bill on the page depicting the
Never mind,
nightmare
try again.
McGucket's mind. In this tornado of awfulness, we can see a can of soda labeled Mountain Don't. I personally prefer Voltage or Baja Blast myself, but personal preference. Type in Mountain Don't, and we're once again given another riddle. Oh boy. Yeah, all in all, there are about another dozen of these riddles, but eventually we're asked the question, Bill Cipher's lawyer? That might seem nonsensical, but this is actually where the conflict comes in. If you scour that thing, you'll see that Bill is represented by the law firm Caesar, Adbash, and Visionaire. All of those happen to be the names of 3 very popular code ciphers, so that's a fun Easter egg. Type those in, and you're asked who defeated Silas Birchtree. If you don't remember, that was the guy Bill took over to lead the Ciphertologists, and he was beaten by the hilariously named Emmeline Butternubbins. Type that last name in, and we're finally told we have earned a treat. Follow these instructions, and it'll actually download a zip file onto your computer called Bill's Files Do Not Open. You have to know every cybersecurity alarm in my head is going off right now, but come on, we gotta open this. Don't screw us, Disney. Thankfully, it's just a bunch of wallpapers, a reward for figuring out this ridiculously complex puzzle. And nothing else, right? Well, at this point, we'll see. It feels like everything in this website is part of a greater puzzle, from fun wallpapers to fake law firms on pamphlets. Now, speaking of fake law firms, we can actually summon Bill's very own lawyer and sign away our soul to him, and this starts us down another rabbit hole. Signing over our soul here will turn the flame of this candle blue, signaling that we're now part of Bill. But that's not the only change it makes. Now, we can interact with the knob on this computer, and doing so treats us to some unsettling audio coming out of the static. This is not our first rodeo, theorists. This is clearly some backwards audio, and it says... Someone is begging for help. Someone that Bill killed. Now, right away, this is cool because in the book of Bill, Bill mentions that he can hear something going on in TV static. So now that we've signed our soul away to him, we can hear it too. We can also learn from another code here on the website that one of Bill's phobias is TV static, so he doesn't love how creepy this is. All in all, this is a neat touch and great character building for Bill, but it's also a huge deal for the story of Gravity Falls moving forward. See, in our last theory, we pointed out a section of the book of Bill where clearly one of the souls that Bill had claimed was somehow using his power to influence the book, writing out pleas for help. Something similar is happening here, just on the website. Someone that Bill has killed is reaching out through this static after we've made our deal with Bill. But who? Well, we actually see them in multiple places throughout this book and this ARG. It's been one of the best secrets hidden in plain sight. See, again, in that last theory, we pointed out that it was clear that not all of the writing in the book was done by Bill himself. Obviously, some of the other pages were done by other characters, like Ford, but even some of the secret codes were from other characters. And we figured that was the case because they were talking about Bill. We wondered if it was Jessie the Oracle, the character we identified as Bill's ex, and while that may partially be the case, she's clearly not the only one writing in this book. Like we said, obviously, pages from Journal 3 were written by Ford, and he also has some of his own codes hidden throughout the book, and a Viking named Olaf seems to be behind the writing in runes as well. But one of the strangest codes was the color block cipher, first deciphered by Reddit user JimMag777. Yeah, these things were a deep cut, but now figure out who wrote these. Huge shout-outs to friend of the channel, Rim Games, for being the first person I saw put this together in his series all about the Book of Bill. In his video solving much of This Is Not Website.com, he was able to figure out that the color block codes were coming from very specific people. Bill's family, and the rest of his race, the people of Euclidia. Yeah, the people that Bill admitted to killing in the book. The color block code is just their language. But how do we know this? Well, this is because of a few things. Firstly, one of the color code blocks refers to Bill as Little Billy and talks about his childhood. This was the same affectionate name that Bill's mom used for him, which we see in another color block code. Another color block code translates to some sort of eulogy for Euclidia, something that sounds like it would have been written by a Euclidean, while yet another points us to a Euclidean agency. And just the cherry on top, when lightning flashes in the Mystery Shack, you can see the Latin phrase Vallis Cineris, or Valley of Ashes, written on the back wall. Typing that...
What did you bring back from your last trip? Feast for dumplings, a bit of local art, a poncho story, a new wake-up call. Everywhere you go with Marriott Bonvoy shapes you, making you the greatest souvenir of all.
Dust is always in the air. Ugh, it's the worst. So get a Swiffer Duster. It captures dust in one swipe without lifting a thing. Trap and lock 3 times more dust. Oh yeah, you'll love Swiffer or your money back.
Yogo Nano presents the Snack Time Standoff. This cowboy wants a tasty snack. And this sheriff knows Yogo Nano is nutritious. Well, let's call that a win-win. Yogo Nano, it's your snack champ.
Benadryl. Bug bites with Benadryl.
There we go.
We say
A little better.
travel with unlimited data.
It's much more of a twirly horn.
Access the internet in more than 200 destinations with no roaming fees. So you can keep using your favorite apps and stay connected with your loved ones. Thousands of travelers trust Olay. Get your eSIM and don't miss a thing.
Typing that into the computer gives us a video of little baby Bill being held by his parents who are obscured and consumed by TV static. And that voice we talked about earlier, it comes back. This confirms that the voice we heard in the static were from the Euclideans, maybe even Bill's parents. Thus why Bill is so terrified of static. Again, huge props to Remy for putting all of that together. Now, you might just think that this is some fun Easter egg, some backstory for Bill, but it's way more than that. This is the key to the future plot points of this series. The people Bill has killed are still in his head, and now with the knowledge that his parents and the other Euclideans are also passing messages along, that's huge. They're also still in his head, and they're the key to beating Bill. Yeah, you heard that right, and there's a ton of proof of this on the website. Like, if you type in Haunted Stan into the computer multiple times, eventually it'll lead to a pop-up where you can ask Bill how Stan beat him. Clicking through the prompt repeatedly will twist the knife into Bill's ego, and eventually he'll break, revealing a series of increasingly staticky messages. They read, "Sometimes when I close my eye, I can still see," and then 4 messages in the various ciphers from the book. When translated, they read, "Through the eyes of everyone I've ever. Sometimes when I close my eye, I can still see through the eyes of everyone I've ever." That's what I bet the message means as. And Bill screams. He can't turn it off. That is his weakness. Plus, I've seen a lot of great evidence pointed out by the community that the major human historical figures that Bill talks about in the Book of Bill are also stuck in his head. And they're using Bill's powers against him, trying to warn other characters about Bill's future plans. And with our belief that Bill has once again escaped through the bird that landed on this statue, that is a pretty massive dangling plot thread to leave hanging and have a solution for in the text if they're never going to address it, which is precisely why they are going to address it. See, I believe that they're going to bring back Gravity Falls in a big way, all thanks to this little ARG and your excitement for it, and there's a ton of evidence to prove this. First off, if you type Season 3 into the computer, it spits back out Season 2. Type that in and it gives you Season 1, but if you type that in, well then it gives you Season -1, Anti-Gravity Falls. This is an absolute curveball, and it could mean a lot of things. Maybe this is a spin-off. Maybe it's some sort of new movie or video game or comic or something. But personally, I think it's pointing towards some sort of prequel series involving Stan or Ford. That's why it's Season -1. Alex has gone on record saying that he'd love to do more stories with Stan and Ford, and if he does that story, it needs to be its own book or series.
If I ever wanted to do something with this show more in a animated context, I'm keeping certain material for them. If I'm going to do some adventures with Stan and Ford, either they need their own book or their own miniseries.
But that's just one. It's one I definitely think they're going to be exploring, but it's not the only one. They could also do some sort of sequel or movie involving all the souls trapped in Bill's head, like we worked out here today. My friend Ryder Foot of a Ferret actually pitched that out in his own recent videos, and it does sound great.
I'm not okay.
I think a continuation of the show just makes sense. This is the company that made X-Men '97 after all, and with other massive fan favorites from the mid-2010s like Regular Show and Adventure Time.
I'm 40 years old. I want new stories. I don't want remakes. I don't want live action. I want something new.
Why hasn't there been any movement on this despite the massive fan interest in this series and some sort of revival? It's simple, friends. Alex Hirsch legally can't work on it right now. See, back in 2018, Alex signed an agreement with Netflix to exclusively develop shows and movies for the streamer. And we know for a fact that he's still under this contract. In April of 2024, Alex did an interview on the channel Hannah Hyperfixates where he said,
I could probably talk Disney into a miniseries if I was out of my Netflix deal and I really wanted to.
If he could get out of his deal, he's still under contract to produce shows and movies for Netflix. Regardless, this quote was from before before the Book of Bill released and was a smashing success. And you best believe that there's some real interest from everyone involved now in making this happen. Just recently at New York Comic Con, Alex said that Disney were the ones that reached out asking him for another Gravity Falls story. And now everyone involved realizes that there's a real hunger for more Gravity Falls content, all because of your excitement. You, me, we all made that happen.
16.
The only domino left to fall is getting Alex out of his Netflix deal, and I bet there are lawyers working their butts off to make that one happen. Mini theory number 1. Is this the limit of Bill Cipher's power? So, along with giving us just a ton of backstory for Bill Cipher, I believe that the Book of Bill also gives us a good reason as to how and why the great Axolotl has so much power over Bill. Why Bill is scared of him and doesn't seem to like axolotls in general. Hear me out. So, if you don't know, the great Axolotl was like the god in the Gravity Falls universe, and he has enough power to both save Bill from the destruction at the end of Weirdmageddon, and then imprison him in interdimensional therapy in the Book of Bill. So, because of that, Bill kind of just tries to avoid the great Axolotl when and where he can. And it's not just the great Axolotl that Bill doesn't seem to like. In another Book of Bill theory, we talked about a puzzle hidden on thisisnotawebsite.com that revealed other lost pages of Journal 3. This one tells the story of a pet axolotl given to Ford named Frillium, and how Bill doesn't like the little guy, eventually convincing Ford to release him back into the wild. Bill clearly didn't want this thing that represented the great axolotl entity, or maybe even had a slice of his power, anywhere near Ford or the portal they were building. So why? Why is Bill so concerned about axolotls, even if they're not a deity? Why does the great Axolotl have so much power over Bill? Well, it all might come down to a little bit of science. See, early on in the Book of Bill, Bill mentions that he can invade and possess anything with neurons. Those are nerve cells typically found in the brain or spinal cord that help pilot our nervous systems. This is actually how and why he can manipulate the Book of Bill as we read it. See, the pages of the book are made from pureed human brain matter pressed into sheets and bound together. So, since there are neurons on this page, easy peasy for Bill to change things around. In fact, while we're on that subject, the book itself is just like strangely organic. It has a human spine. Bill asks the reader for blood to use as ink on pages.
2, 4,
there are straight up
6.
souls inside of it that will scream if the book is burned. You know, it's just as dark as you'd come to expect from Bill Cipher. But here's the thing. Axolotls are pretty unique when it comes to their nervous system and neurons. It's pretty well known that axolotls have incredible healing abilities. They can regrow limbs with ease. They're basically like Wolverine with a straight-up healing factor. But this also extends to the neurons in their brains. See, unlike humans and other mammals, the healing of axolotls also extends to their cranium. According to recent studies, axolotls are able to regenerate their brains, even if large portions are damaged or removed.
I have to
On
use
top
it all
of that,
now.
They were able to reconnect a lot of the neurons in their brains with each other too, meaning that the regrown brain had the same functions. If Bill takes control of creatures through the neurons in their brains, and axolotls can regrow damaged neurons, theoretically, axolotls could regrow the neurons infected by Bill, meaning that he wouldn't be able to control them for very long, if at all. That's why he doesn't like regular axolotls.
Hi, sorry, I just noticed. I don't really look at the chat too much while I work.
I guess not even
Thanks for stopping
Bill
in.
Cipher can beat the science.
It doesn't get more exciting than this, sorry.
Ripping these mysteries apart, we as a community haven't found everything in the book. See, at a recent panel that Alex Hirsch attended at Emotion London 2024, he took to the stage to let us know that we haven't found everything yet. Now, I'll
2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Well, I can just add them to the claws.
Oh, is that a challenge? You know we have to rise to this occasion and take our crack at it. And while no one has found that secret yet, I think I have a hunch about what this puzzle is, and what exactly it means for the future of this series. And if I'm right, this puzzle is going to show us a dimension where Bill Cipher has no power, which might be the key to defeating him once and for all. But by the end of this theory today, I'm not afraid to admit that I might need your help to solve this completely. This is the hardest puzzle in the Book of Bill after all. So please, grab your code breakers and journals, loyal theorists. We have to take a crack at solving this final puzzle. So, okay, where do we even start with this? There's so much packed into the Book of Bill, and this is not a website.com, that it seems daunting. But thankfully, I do believe we have a lead. See, at this same panel where we said the puzzle hasn't been found, Alex jokingly scrolled through the Book of Bill while searching for a hint. He landed on a random page, the start of the missing pages of Journal 3 revealed in the Book of Bill. So, I don't know if I need to tell you this, but nothing is random, loyal theorists. universes. This has to be it. And I think I know exactly where this thread leads. See, in the corner of this page, you'll notice some art of an axolotl that doesn't actually appear in the Book of Bill. But you can still find this page on the website. Yeah, in the Journal 3 section of the Book of Bill, you'll find a page with a snake on it. And the head on the snake is one of Bill's ciphers. Translated, it reads Ouroboros. And Ouroboros is a symbol of a snake eating its own tail, symbolizing an unending cycle. It was common in Egyptian, Greek, and Norse myth, and has been used symbolically in everything from the X-Files to Full Metal Alchemist to Ninjago. Regardless, if you enter this code into McGucket's computer, it reveals these missing pages with the axolotl art. Man, this is such a cool puzzle and even fits with the hint hidden here, right? Like an Ouroboros represents an unending cycle, and to get this clue, you need to go back and forth between the website and the book in an infinite cycle. It just makes sense. Regardless, this page tells us about a gift that McGucket once got Ford. That's axolotl, which he got for Ford because he thought the frills reminded him of Ford's sideburns. Ford even names him Frillium because that's the cutest thing ever, and I think I'm gonna die. Ford was initially delighted by the pet, but at the time he was also working with Bill. Bill did not like the little creature. In fact, he seemed entirely repulsed by it. He told Ford that he shouldn't have any distractions while they worked on their portal together. And so, Ford released the axolotl into a creek behind his lab, and though it looked back at him with a bittersweet sympathy, it left. Of course, if you know anything about Gravity Falls lore, all of this will make sense to you. A strange quirk of axolotl biology means that they can regrow their limbs if they're ever lost, something that Ford finds appealing. As he says, to be wounded, leave no scars. Because of this ability, and along with being entirely adorable and lovable little creatures, axolotls represented rebirth in Aztec mythology. But within the series, the axolotl represents far more than just rebirth. The highest deity within the Gravity Falls universe also takes the form of an axolotl and acts as a direct rival for Bill's cycle. If Bill is a being all about destruction and chaos in a quest for immortality, the great axolotl
will sit overnight, and then I'll have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 claws.
Representation of these two cosmic forces sort of pulling on Ford and the rest of the Pines family in a galactic game of tug of war. But there's something else here on these pages, and this is why I think this was the hint from Alex. See, on the second page of this journal entry, there's a little doodle of a, quote, new star system down at the very bottom of the page. Now, this stuck out to me a lot because the study of stars and other star systems just fascinates me, and at first I wondered if this was something very familiar. See, while it's not perfect, it reminded me of the Alpha Centauri star system, which is actually the closest star system to our solar system. But it doesn't really line up super well when you actually, examine it under a microscope. Plus, it says new star system, and we've known about Alpha Centauri for centuries. But despite that, I do wonder if there's some information we can sort of glean out of this. See, in physics and astronomy, there's a principle known as the three.
Is that really 100% natural? Canadian milk, cream, and cultures. 3 simple ingredients.
Astro Original. Simple and 100% natural. Seriously.
The Scotties you know, but even softer. New Scotties Ultra Soft.
So you found an awesome job post, but your workplace outdated? No worries. With Adobe Acrobat Pro's super easy editing tools, you can quickly cut every video without needing to find the original play box. Just click which one to modify, and in seconds you'll have it created. Now go land that dream job with Adobe Acrobat. Start your free 7-day trial now.
Body problem. Yeah, that isn't just a solid book series and Netflix show. It's an actual real scientific concept. So, what is it then? Well, when you have two bodies floating out in space affecting one another, like two big stars or planets, it's very easy to use American science to predict the speeds and locations of those objects far into the future. However, if you add a
not as fast as I would like, but forward momentum is being done very slowly.
It becomes very hard hard to make any of the same predictions.
I can do it.
to the
I
point
just
where this
need more stuff.
problem
I got
becomes
3 of those
more or
bears.
less
I'll get the other ones
unsolvable.
tomorrow to the
I'm
laundry.
hoping that isn't a sign of things to come here for this puzzle. And that
Yeah,
it's
they've been in an
more
attic
solvable
box for
for
God
us,
knows how
but
long,
that
so.
doesn't bode very well. But hey, here's the thing. This little doodle was done in blue ink, which is
Oh,
a pen
I'll make
color
money
that's
off
been
of it, though.
associated with McGucket throughout all of the
Yeah.
This Is Not a Website entries.
Yeah.
Plus, on top of that, this isn't the
I
only
hope so.
time we've seen a little solar system doodle like this.
The weather's not
There's
been the
another
best.
one, one of the best hidden codes that the Book of Bill has to offer. A little
Well,
while back, Reddit user
probably froze to death
was
and
one of the first to
probably
notice
drowned.
this little teeny tiny code deep within the folder 2 page.
Alright, good night, Mom. Love you.
You basically have to like crack your book in half to even see it.
That's
But
my
when you
money.
translate it, it reads, "Destruction is a form of creation." That seems very much like something Bill would believe, wouldn't it? Well, typing this
There
into
we
the
go.
website gives us another clue, and I believe this is the end game for this whole mystery. Yeah, as you can see, this thing is wild. It's a note page from McGucket's personal notebook that is just scribbled from left to right, top to bottom, with text and equations and doodles and codes. And if you look down at the sticky note at the bottom of the page, you'll notice a similar looking solar system drawn in the same color. Yeah, it's not quite the same, but enough that I feel like these have to be connected. Oh, and before you suggest that this is an atom, there's actually an atomic drawing also on the page that is a different style. So this leans much more in the design of a solar system than an atom. Regardless, because of that
There we
connection,
go.
is there
Gave him some
something else on
antlers.
this
He's a
page
little
that
bit more than he
confuses
was now.
users? Well, the most
Still want to give him a
obvious
nice
thing
big
here
bow
is
or
this
something
giant
here.
drawing cutting through the middle of the page, which has McGucket concluding
Don't think I have
there is
anything in
a
that
giant
eyebrow
open
color, though.
space-time, and this might be the key to stopping Bill. But here's where the difficulty of the puzzle comes into play. No one, us at Theorist HQ included, have been able to quite figure out what this page is pointing to yet. And believe me, that is not for a lack of trying. For example, a few of the talented theorists over at the Gravity Falls Reddit and Discord have taken to overlaying parts of the Book of Bill or those unlockable wallpapers we discussed in our last theory onto this note page. And honestly, while that sounds
Bucket, go for it.
absolutely bonkers on paper, but don't fish, things do line up super well. Maybe well enough to not be a coincidence.
I don't care anymore. He must be spicy. He must be fabulous. Stylish.
Yes or no on the board with the yes and no and the infinity symbol on this note page? Well, one guess of what lines up with the big hole in space if you do this. Yeah, that's the symbol of Bill on the Ouija board. That's really compelling, and only one of the things they found that lined up really well. Maybe there is something more going on to this here. But while that is super fascinating and might lead somewhere, that's not what I want to talk about with this page. No, instead, what I want to focus on is something a bit more surface level here. See, one of the big pieces of text on this page reads, "I cannot see him, he is blind." At first, that might seem like a little bit of a confusing phrase, but in the Book of Bill, we learn that Bill once possessed McGucket's brain and left because it was just too much for him. I believe that this left McGucket forever scarred, and also led him to find a way to completely shield himself from Bill. A way to never be seen by him in his all-seeing eye ever again. So, cannot see him, he is blind. And, well, I believe that McGucket found one. If you notice on the sides of the grid, there are two numbers that are circled. Column 12 and row 20. If you cross-reference these on the actual sheet, you'll notice that they line up with the number 35. And there's a space right before 35 that itself is circled and labeled weak point. And if this weak point is right before 35, I would presume that this has to be 34. Now, that could just be a coincidence, but this isn't the only time we've seen 34 in this ARG, or is it the only time that it's said to be a blind spot for Bill? If you type 7 eyes into the website, it brings up a Polaroid portrait of a shadowy figure, and if you squint, you can make out that this is Jesselbrom the Unswerving. This is the Oracle from Journal 3, and if our previous Book of Bill theory is correct,
Hot.
he's also Bill's ex-lover and former henchmaniac that betrayed him. Now, that in and of itself is fascinating, that she referenced again here in this ARG. But if you flip the Polaroid over, it reveals the message, "Leave him. Escape to Dimension Blank. It's against the rules, but it's the one reality where you may be safe from him." Clearly, she's talking about Bill here, and the desire to find a reality that's shielded from him. Perhaps some sort of weak point, just like what's
A little bit more
labeled on
snazzy.
McGucket's page. If that's too much of a stretch for you, like, hey, that's fair. But it's not all. See, at the bottom of this flipped Polaroid, barely visible in the dark ink, you'll find another code. When you translate it, it reads, "Set chords for dimension reality." That's reality spelled with the number 34, like lead speak. Also, it is not beyond me that Alex absolutely slipped a subtle R34 joke into a Disney project. Absolute gay. Regardless, So there's that connection again. 34, reality, a weak spot where you can't see, and the one reality where you may be safe from him. All of it lines up clearly. Dimension 34, this reality, is a blind spot for Bill. Or maybe it's even more dangerous than that. Maybe it could be the end of the entire multiverse. See, if you type reality with the 34 into thisisnotawebsite.com, you're given a bunch of photographs of Bill's friends, the Henchmaniacs, explaining that they found a new home. We know from Gravity Falls Lost Legends, the first Gravity Falls comic, that the Henchmaniacs survived Weirmageddon, and this tells us that they've somehow escaped the Nightmare Realm and now they're living in Dimension 34. Bad news, right? Well, it could get even worse. Another interpretation of McGuckett's note is that reality is not a weak point for Bill, but one for the entire fabric of space-time. This could explain why Jesse's message on the Polaroid says that going there is against the rules. If it's a weak point for the entire multiverse, one wrong move could unravel everything. With that in mind, it's not a far leap to assume that maybe this reality is comprised of some sort of antimatter. If you don't know, antimatter is a real scientific concept. It's basically like negative matter. For every atom of real material, there's an equal and opposite particle of antimatter. Should matter and antimatter ever come into contact? Well, the results could be explosive. So, going to a dimension of antimatter, one that's a weak spot potentially for the whole multiverse, could be bad news. Plus, in our last theory, we speculated that a series called Anti-Gravity Falls might be one of the ways the franchise moves forward, either as a prequel or a sequel. Perhaps some sort of anti-gravity falls, as in the town lies inside of this Dimension 34, and Dipper and Mabel and everyone else is going to have to go there to defeat Bill. Mini theory number 2, is Dimension 34 from the Book of Bill just our universe? The real world? In one of our previous theories, we suggested that there was a dimension in the Gravity Falls multiverse where Bill has no power. There was a lot of evidence pointing towards this dimension being Reality 34, or just reality, spelled like that. But we also asked for your help to do some more digging to really make this theory a home run. And one of the biggest suggestions I saw was that reality was actually the real world, literally our universe. The thought process here comes down to the fact that the photographs we see of the Henchmaniacs in reality are all incredibly realistic. Far more realistic than most of the other art we've seen in Gravity Falls, or that was made for the Book of Bill, or thisisnotawebsite.com.com. That would mean that our world is the safe point outside of Bill's nearly omnipotent power, and maybe that future Gravity Falls media could include a live-action series or ARG.
No more live action, please. We're done with that.
Sadly, I just don't think it quite works out. Let me break down why. Firstly, we know for certain that Bill has been able to look into the real world. That's literally how the Book of Bill interfaces with us as readers. We are interacting with him through the book and the ARG website. On top of that, we previously did a theory suggesting that Bill had possessed Gravity Falls creator Alex Hirsch, which was confirmed in the Book of Bill. If our reality was a blind spot for Bill where he has no power, how would he be able to do either of those things, or even communicate with us from the Thera Prism? But on top of that, we also have to keep in mind the 2016 Gravity Falls scavenger hunt, or the Cypher hunt, which ended with a life-size statue of Bill being discovered in Reedsport, Oregon. Back in the day, the Cypher hunt implied that the statue was literally the one we saw from the cartoon series, and that therefore the animated series was set in our reality. But the new information we have from the Book of Bill makes it pretty clear that our reality is a separate one from Gravity Falls. The book is thrown through a dimensional portal in the Gravity Falls universe and ends up here in the real world. That would mean that this statue from the Cypher hunt was from a different time that Bill Cypher had entered our universe. My guess is that this is from when Alex Hirsch first made his deal with Bill, assuming that Matt's final Gravity Falls theory is correct. Either way, it means that Bill has been in our world before, has used his powers to make deals here, and therefore that this is not reality. So yeah, well, it's a great idea. And you guys are awesome for putting the pieces together. I sadly just don't think it quite works. Still though, it wouldn't surprise me to see a live-action installment to the franchise because of these realistic pictures of the Henchmaniacs. Now, the real question is whether or not they'll be as vomit-inducing as the other live-action Disney remakes. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And cut. Up next on Film Theory.
Blacklight Vision and Journal 3 sent me down a rabbit hole that led me to only one conclusion. Alex Hirsch, creator of Gravity Falls, he is Bill Cypher. Or rather, he's possessed by Bill Cypher in the real world.
Hey creators, do any of these comments look familiar? Yeah, same. But do any of these people actually follow you? Any single one of these comments could be your next superfan or your loyal customer. Instead, they're just grabbing your valuable content and disappearing. Meanwhile, your follower count stays not moving. Here's what changed everything for me. Setting one simple rule, follow first. It's super simple. You'll set up your automation that says, comment, blank words, get the link. They automatically get a message from you, making sure that they're following you. It actually checks, and boom, once they're actually following you, they'll get the link to access whatever it is that you're offering them. It's so easy to set up. It's literally a template. If you're tired of giving away your best content to ghost followers, not sleep on ManyChat, trust me, your content deserves followers who actually stick around.
Some like being toasted. They don't how you like.
Pop-Tart, crank me!
The teaser trailer for Five Nights at Freddy's 2 has finally dropped, and it managed to pack so much about its plot into just 50 seconds. Enough to solve this movie months before it's out. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Film Theory, the show that always comes back. Just like you can always come back by hitting that subscribe button. So, loyal theorists, the time has come. Five Nights at Freddy's is coming back to theaters this year. We're truly in the end game now, and the marketing for the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 movie has started up, with our first big look into the film coming with its official teaser trailer. Now, obviously, FNAF is a huge part of theorist history. I mean, it feels like we've done literally hundreds of videos about this franchise over at our sister location Game Theory. But the films are an entirely different beast, an entirely different timeline to theorize about. Matt trusted me to take on franchises like this as the film theorist. He trusted our very first theory predicting the first movie because he was in it. So it's time to do the same with FNAF 2. In the past couple of weeks, Tom and I have sat down and really put our heads together to figure out what the heck is going on here. Like, clearly this movie is taking cues from the FNAF 2 game. That was a prequel to the first game, and this is clearly a 45 seconds long. Can we really crack this movie wide open with just that? Well, we figured out more with less. I think we've done it, loyal theorists. By looking at this teaser, comparing it to what we know from the game series, adding in our speculation from the fallout of the first movie, and using the rules and laws of filmmaking in a horror series like this, I believe I've solved where this movie is headed months before it's And not only that, but I think we can get a pretty good idea of where the inevitable FNAF 3 movie is headed to. So grab your spring-lock suits, loyal theorists, as we take a bite out of this teaser. So, okay, first things first, let's make sure we're all on the same page after this first movie, just in case you need a little refresher. I mean, it has been a couple of years at this point, so understand. Five Nights at Freddy's was the story of Mike Shaw, man taking care of his kid sister Abby as he takes on a job as the night security guard at Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. Mike is haunted by guilt for the death of his little brother Garrett, who was murdered by the serial killer William Afton, who also so happens to be the owner of Freddy's and killed several other children at the pizzeria years ago, and now those spirits haunt the restaurant and want Abby to become one of them. So Mike teams up with Afton's daughter Vanessa to take down Afton, save Abby, and hopefully find some peace for the ghost children. Well, at least until this sequel is, right? Now, with that out of the way, let's go through this teaser shot by shot and frame by frame. We open on a poster for Freddy Fazbear. The glass on this poster display is broken, which may mean that it's the same poster we see in the first movie. If you don't remember, Max's brother and his gang of hooligans smashed and shattered this glass when they broke into Freddy's in that movie. Not sure if it's exactly the same poster, but it probably doesn't matter since I doubt we'll be spending a significant amount of time here anyway. Regardless, we do know that we are going back to the original pizzeria in some way. We know this thanks to some of our fellow FNAF tubers who did a set visit during the filming of this movie. Here we see that the studio rebuilt a facade of the front of the restaurant, but not the whole thing, so I doubt we're going to be spending a ton of time inside of it. Either way, this is just an establishment shot for us and the teaser, so let's move on. Next, we see a shot of an endoskeleton turning on. If you don't know, these are the mechanical parts inside of the animatronics that let them move and work. We actually see some of them getting worked on in the previous movie, but it's also worth noting that this one for the teaser, it isn't the same type. This is an Endo 02, a more advanced type of endoskeleton that we first saw in the FNAF 2 game. I mean, hey, that makes sense. Like, it's the FNAF 2 movie, of course they're taking cues from the FNAF 2 game. Anyway, you can tell this thanks to the curved mouth on this one. The original endoskeletons in the first movie had squared-off mouths. And there's a voiceover for William Afton, welcoming us back to Freddy's. It's a nice meta touch to get us back in this world, but in the universe, this is likely a recording or a flashback to when one of the restaurants is having its big opening. Since Afton is welcoming us back, I'm guessing that this is the sister location. It just seems more relevant than, say, the original location undergoing some sort of renovation and then reopening just for the sake of it. Either Either way, I expect that Afton's ghost will be using this audio to great effect. Like, if this is an actual audio recording, I can see him using it to torment Mike and the others. It would just be super creepy, and I'm all for it. Suddenly, we see ourselves in some sort of circus.
My guts are not happy.
Certainly Freddy Fazbear themes, since we see kids in the background dressed up as characters from Freddy's. And there are also some themed attractions using those characters here. I'm almost certain that this is going to be an event called Fast Fest. We know that this is likely going to be a big part of the story, since those YouTubers I mentioned earlier, like Taco, visited the set and found posters for this event. Now, this is interesting because the idea of a circus, or a carnival, or fair is a big talking point in the FNAF community right now. I briefly mentioned this in my last FNAF movie theory, but in the lore of the Freddy's games, there was an event called Fall Fest that ran from around 1970 until at least 1983. It's a huge part of the history of these characters in this world, and Scott seems to be bringing these ideas into the universe in a new way. Let's be real, that makes sense with the way the movies have been streamlining and combining the expansive lore of the series, so yeah. The next thing we see is Abby pulling up to the second Freddy's location on her bike. This is the sister location, so to speak. So there are actually a few things we can gather from this shot. First off, if we look at both the state of the restaurant and the surrounding area, this location...
There's a method to the madness, but the madness and the method are not quite working out right there. As they should be. Get in there.
And grass and the like. You can actually see this more clearly in those behind-the-scenes set visits.
Okay, what else can I fuck up?
And funnily enough, this building is actually in the same parking lot as the facade of the first Freddy's location built for this movie. But just so everyone's aware, that doesn't mean that they're going to be in the same location or even anywhere close to each other in the actual movie. Film productions do this sort of thing all the time, reusing sets and locations and either changing the camera angles or background details that seem like different locations. It just saves on production costs, which is almost certainly what's happening here, since this is a relatively
Get these under the coat of black.
The second thing we can gather from the shot of
Got
Abby,
all that together.
given Abby's expression here, she's likely never been to this location before, so she's likely been drawn here by something. And I think I know what that thing is. Right after this in the teaser, we see a shot of Mike finding a note taped to his door, reading, "Gone to fix my friends." This is probably from Abby, and it's explaining why she's left and gone to the sister location. The friends that she's talking about here in the note are probably the ghosts in the original animatronics. If you remember, Abby was super close to them in the previous film, enough so that they wanted her to be like them. But they seemed to end the last movie in a little bit of peace. So this note tells us that they're still in contact with Abby, and that something has gone wrong since the last movie. Now, that thing that's gone wrong could be a lot of things. Being trapped in new animatronic bodies, being tortured by Afton's ghost, but another big option, perhaps that AI has gone a little rogue in these animatronics and is somehow controlling or hurting the spirits. Anyway, we might also know how they're talking to Abby. During one of his charity live streams, Donka revealed an image of a Fast Talker toy provided to him by the film's production, with a screen on it reading, "You there?" Basically, if I had to guess, this looks like a way that the ghosts are communicating with the living characters. Now, this thing is strange because nothing like it has ever really appeared in the game. So the closest we get is Afton's walkie-talkie in sister location, which he uses to communicate with the crying child. But even that is weird and different than what we're seeing here. The ghosts in the film seem to be able to just talk to Abby and communicate with other characters like Mike through their dreams. So perhaps this Fast Talker is a way for them to do so without needing them to be asleep. We then see a conversation between Vanessa and Mike, where Vanessa is warning them that she's likely talking about the animatronics, which we'll get to in just a sec. But the big things here, well, first off, Vanessa has completely recovered from her hospital stay, so I guess perhaps she was not a robot as much as Matt might have wanted her to be. But the other big thing here is that she's not wearing her cop uniform, either here or in any other shot in the teaser. Don't get me wrong, she could still be a cop and just be taking some time off or something, but this tells me that she's either stepped back from that role or has been let go from the force for some reason. We see another shot for holding a gun later in the teaser, so she might still be on the force, but I wouldn't be surprised if her connection to a serial killer was somehow revealed and compromised her job. But anyway, why was she warning Mike that they're out there? Well, that's because of the next few shots that we see here. Yeah, we immediately see what looks like Toy Bonnie peeking in through a curtain into a window of a house. Shortly afterwards, there are a couple of other shots of Toy Bonnie lifting up some sort of needle as if he's about to attack somebody, and then a shot of a couple cowering in fear inside of a living room. These two shots are back-to-back, and though trailer editing doesn't mean that they're 100% connected, I'd be shocked if they weren't. Big picture here, though, is that Toy Bonnie and the the other toy animatronics, as we're about to see, are no longer confined to the pizzeria, and that's a huge deal. See, the animatronics going out and about isn't really a thing that we ever see in the game series. The closest thing I can think of is in Sister Location when Innard leaves the Sister Location wearing Michael as a skin suit. But that's not nearly the same as the animatronics, just like straight up roaming the streets like we see here. This is extra strange too because it's established in the series that this would be pretty difficult for them. Glamrock Freddy from Security Breach explains that if the animatronics leave the Pizzaplex, they will eventually run out of power. Some endings have Freddy using a car battery to stay active because of this. It's not just the Security Breach animatronics either, but in the week before novel, a story set in the week before the FNAF 1 video game, one of the main goals of the original animatronics is to be able to leave the pizzeria. To do this, they overcharge themselves so they don't need to charge themselves again, at least for a while. These toy animatronics might need to recharge at some point, giving our heroes a ticking clock that they can outlast as the animatronics slowly have to power down, perhaps over a series of days. So basically, they'd have to survive 5 nights at Freddy's, or rather, 5 nights outside of Freddy's. Of course, this scene with Toy Bonnie isn't the only scene throughout the teaser with the animatronics outside of the pizzeria. Later on, we see a man played by classic character actor Wayne Knight peer through a closet window in a school. He sees Toy Chica on the other side before she pulls him through the window, presumably to his death. We also see her feet in a room similar to this, likely before or after she's pulled this man into the room, as well as a shot of Toy Chica opening some sort of garage with her hands. There's also shots of Mangle breaking in through a window in a house, another one of Mangle crashing into a car windshield, and then someone getting attacked and pulled up to the ceiling by Mangle. It looks like
Okay,
that
where
last
did
scene
it go?
probably also
The one
takes
with the
place
tongue.
in this school. And another shot shortly after this sees another new character, a blonde girl, looking up and screaming. Given the angle of this shot looking down at this girl, this is likely from Mangle's point of view. I wouldn't be surprised if it's immediately connected with the shot of Mangle pulling the other guy up to the ceiling. If I were to guess, this is likely a scene similar to the first movie where a bunch of side characters are killed to show just how dangerous these new animatronics are. I wouldn't be surprised if these characters go to school with Abby and are bullies or something similarly unlikable. We also see another shot of Mike, Abby, and Vanessa in what looks like an office in a school or some random house, looking terrified. So I'm betting that this school sequence is actually a big set piece for the movie. We then see a man's hand pressing a Showtime button to start an animatronic show. This is likely at the sister location since we see a different Showtime button in the first.
Yogo Nano presents the Snack Time Standoff. This cowboy wants a tasty snack. And this year, Yogo Nano is nutritious. Well, let's call that a win-win. Yogo Nano, it's your snack champ.
Prices were just too good.
You're gonna need a bigger truck.
We do rent trucks.
The Home Depot. Low prices guaranteed.
At Chat Mobile, you'll squeeze more out of your phone budget. Prepaid plans start only $19 a month. Plus, there's no commitment, no credit checks, no data overages. Visit Chatter, Canada's #1 prepaid mobile provider, in-store or online at chattermobile.com.
Hyaluronic serum, a journey into the essence of skin vitality. Beneath the surface, the transformation begins. Hydrated, firm, youthful, skin at its most beautiful. This is the serum that suits skin aging. This is the hyaluronic serum by Dr. Barbara Stern.
The first film, and that one's on a wall, not a podium. Next up, we have a shot of a silhouetted man in a hallway as doors fly open. This is actually a really effective shot, in my opinion. It's very creepy. This man is almost certainly William Afton. His build just looks a lot like actor Matthew Lillard, and we know that he's going to be in this movie somewhere. I'm gonna say that this is either a dream sequence where he's haunting Mike and Vanessa, or it's literally his ghost haunting the two. Also worth noting that there are 6 doors in this scene, perhaps representing the 5 kids that Afton murdered in the restaurants, and Mike and Abby's brother Garrett's, whom he also killed. This is likely setting up or reminding us of Afton's connection with Mike and Garrett, which will be explored later in the series. Actually, while we're on the subject, I gotta say, I think it's surprising the lack of action that we actually get in this teaser. Other than some voiceover and this scene here, the only other hint we get is a shot of Spring Bonnie's hand picking up a knife. I wouldn't be shocked if he's just not as present in this film as he was in the first one. I mean, it would be weird for him to come back as a big twist, third act villain when that's exactly what he did in the first movie, right? The time spent with Afton here in this second movie, in my opinion, would be better spent setting him up as a larger villain in the third film, but I digress. Now we get a shot of a large Balloon Boy animatronic, eyes glowing as he activates inside one of the pizzerias. You can tell that it's that because of the checkerboard pattern here in the back of the shots. It's just classic FNAF imagery. Balloon Boy actually returns here from the first movie where he was just like a strange, haunted figurine. Talk about a glow up, am I right? So the fact that we're getting a Balloon Boy animatronic isn't that surprising. He was in the FNAF 2 game after all. But an interesting connection here that we put together, well, in Tom's very first FNAF Theory as host of Game Theory, he talked about the Fall Fest and how that makes Balloon Boy make way more sense. Like, a guy holding balloons doesn't really fit super well with animal animatronics, right? But it would make sense at something like a carnival or a circus. Character walking around, handing out balloons to kids and visitors. The fact that the movie seems to be rolling the idea of circus in here with Fast Fest just really makes that work even more. And finally, we hear Afton yell showtime before we see Toy Freddy walking through Fast Fest. If you notice, there are tons of cosplayers here in the background, and it's just a really cool touch. Now then, that's all of the shots for the trailer, but what can we learn here by reading between the lines? And can we look back at some of our previous speculation and see how it lines up? Well, the first big flag that Matt and I planted in our speculation about the rest of the FNAF movie series was that Garrett, Mike's brother that Afton killed, was going to replace Charlie as the spirit possessing the puppet. If you don't remember, the puppet was an animatronic introduced in FNAF 2, so again, it would make sense for them to show up in this movie. The reasoning was that this would give Mike even more of a connection to Afton, offer some real emotional stakes to the other ghosts in the series, and that the puppet was teased in the credits of the first movie, spelling out how to find him. Go check out our full theory talking about that if you want all the details. Well, this teaser gives us another big indication that the puppet is going to be a big player in the rest of this story. Whether it's in this movie or another sequel, during some of Afton's voiceover in this teaser, we can hear the music box used to keep the puppet at bay in the FNAF 2 game playing in the background. So yeah, keep your eyes and ears peeled for more references to this and any indication that this version of the puppet is Garrett, because that is absolutely an arc that they're following here. A prediction that I'm a little less confident in, though, is my analysis of the script pages that Scott released. If you don't remember, last year in honor of the 10-year anniversary of FNAF, Scott released 4 pages of the script for FNAF 2. But the catch was that only one of them was real. If you want an in-depth look at these pages and an analysis of them, go check out my theory from last year. But the one that I thought was going to be the real one was this one, which talks about haunted plushies and Mike coming to the realization that he needs to burn them. At the time, I was confident that this was pointing to the toy animatronics being the villains of this movie and the need to destroy them. But after this teaser, I'm just less sure about that. I mean, hey, you can't get them all right all the time. See, Abby is the one encouraging Mike to burn the toys in this page, but that doesn't line up with what we see here in the teaser, where it looks like she's the one who wants to help save the plushies. So, what does that mean for the pages? Well, if this one is correct, then I think the fourth page is. This one is from the cold open of describing a man taking his children into what we believe to be one of the pizzerias and into a room underneath its carousel. This page is an entirely realistic option. It came down to this one and the plushie burning page. The reason I didn't go with it originally was because some of the characters present in the script probably shouldn't have been here. But now, especially with how the FNAF movie franchise is mixing and matching elements from across the entire game series and timeline, I'm less sure about that. So, okay, if this page is legit, then that begs the question, who is this guy? This man leading these kids into some level below the pizzeria? Well, the obvious answer would be Afton, and that this is some sort of flashback. But the page really implies that these kids are his actual children. You don't see Vanessa here in this flashback, so I don't think that this is Afton. So, who is it? Well, I believe that it's the person who's taken over Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria and is the entire reason the second movie is happening. Here, hear me out. So, I'm pretty sure that the shot of Toy Freddy walking through Fazfest is set in the film's modern day and not during a flashback. Why do I think that? Well, think back to those set visit videos we talked about earlier. In those, Dawko and the other FNAF tubers found posters for Fazfest on the facade of the rundown buildings. If this Fazfest was set in the past, or during a flashback, the building shouldn't be nearly this rundown. So, okay, Fazfest is set during the modern day. But what does that mean? Well, think about this. The last time that we saw Afton, he was dying in his spring lawsuit, his soul was being tortured by Golden Freddy. So, if Fazfest is set in the current day, and if Afton, the person who owns the Freddy Fazbear franchise, is dead, who is Fest. That was the guy from the Clodovis page. Oh, and as an aside, this could also explain why Abby feels like she needs to go help her friends. If a new group or company has come in and bought up all of the Freddy Fazbear assets and are trying to relaunch things, they may have taken parts from the previous animatronics to sort of repair or enhance the toy animatronics. And if they mixed and matched parts from the different animatronics, I could leave the spirits feeling mixed up and confused. Similar to how the Funtime animatronics from the games were built using remnants, which just jumbled up their spirits. If you don't, remnant is blessing the sweets of a child. It's a long story and not super relevant to this theory today, so just don't worry.
I'm having a
Anyway,
thought.
actually, that is the underlying storyline of this film. Someone new has come in to buy up Freddy, and they stumbled into something way darker than they anticipated. They somehow activated the toy animatronics, angered the ghosts, and now they're on a killing rampage through this town. So Mike, Abby, and Vanessa have to stop the animatronics while helping to save the ghosts, all while they're haunted by the memory of Afton and Garrett. Perhaps literally. So that's a lot. And while that's everything I think we can glean about this movie from the teaser, I do believe we can sit down and look at what they've shown us here and get an idea of where future FNAF movies are going to. See, the very fact that we see the animatronics out and about in neighborhoods and carnivals and schools in this movie means that the FNAF film franchise is following an arc traditional for these sorts of horror films. With every single film, they need to be going bigger and better than the last. From one building to a larger neighborhood and a school in FNAF's case. And that tells us a lot about the stories they're going to adapt for the third film. We've talked about this in previous FNAF movie theories before, about how a third FNAF movie likely isn't adapting FNAF 3 because it isn't as exciting a game to transfer to the big screen. Like, if they kept things super faithful, it would just be like Josh Hutcherson and William Afton hanging out in an old building for an hour and a half. It's not exactly riveting cinema. And after watching this teaser, I think Scott and the filmmakers have realized this too, because they already seem to be incorporating a lot of the more interesting details from the FNAF 3 game into this movie, with someone new coming in to restart Freddy's. Because they're already likely using that plot point from the FNAF 3 game, I doubt that they'd reuse it in the FNAF 3 movie. So they'll need to do something else. FNAF 4 and being stuck in a dream makes even less sense, because it's so heavy and weird and isn't the escalation that the filmmakers are probably looking for, right? A dream just feels smaller instead of going bigger. That's the natural arc of
Hi, sweetie.
And why eventually we
You're
get
awake.
Jason X where they
Did you
jumped
shit the
shark
bed?
so high they ended up in space. So think that through. We went from being in one location in FNAF 1, the pizzeria, where most of the hauntings happen in a single place. Once you actually leave Freddy Fazbear's, the characters were more or less safe for the rest of the movie. Now we're in FNAF 2, where threats and hauntings have escalated outwards. The animatronics are no longer confined
He wants to go to bed. I got an hour left though. So he will have to suffer.
Neighborhood or at a school. So what would a third movie need to do to go even bigger than that? My first thought was that maybe, hey, they'll pull a Jurassic Park 2 and we'll end up in a city of some sorts. And then I thought, nah, that'd be kind of dumb. Like, what is Scott gonna do here? Pull out the old Plushies Take Manhattan script? No, man, no. They could do something similar to Pizzeria Simulator, but I'm also skeptical of that simply because they don't really have enough characters to do the whole gather and burn it all down like we see in that game. 2 movies worth of animatronics just isn't enough, so what's the next logical step then? Well, say it with me, security breach. I mean, yeah, we saw that guy. We already have Vanessa as a main character in these films. A large mall or building like a pizzaplex is a natural relation for these sorts of horror film franchises. This would let us introduce another new slate of animatronic characters that fit the cast that we've established in these movies, and the bones of the security breach story would allow for closure for Mike, Abby, and Vanessa. They could end the story by burning everything down and releasing the spirits of the dead kids, while moving on from the trauma of the characters themselves. Plus, it would allow for this story trilogy to get the biggest and most recognizable parts of the FNAF game, leaving other, more out-there projects like Help Wanted or the novels open for adaptation down the line should the movie franchise be successful to continue. It all just makes too much sense, and that's why I'm planting my flag here now. Five Nights at Freddy's 3 is going to be a security breach adaptation. And hey, maybe if it does well enough, one day we'll get far enough along in the series to adapt FNAF World. I actually think that would legitimately be pretty cool. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And cut. Up next on Film Theory, SpongeBob SquarePants isn't stupid. And when you take that to the logical extreme, this adorable yellow rectangle might have some truly dark intentions.
Isn't it absolutely bonkers that you can walk into a store, hand someone a piece of plastic and they will willingly hand over Reese's cups. Forget flying cars. This is it. We're at the pinnacle.
The plot for the second Five Nights at Freddy's movie is right in front of us. In celebration of the franchise's 10th anniversary, Scott released 4 pages of the script, but only one of them is real. The key to figuring out which one is hidden on one of these script pages, and I figured it out. I know which one it is. I'm not crazy, you're crazy. Hello, Internet. Welcome to Film Theory, the show where it's my turn to count animatronic toads. Can you believe that we're almost coming up on the 1-year anniversary of the FNAF movie? It's surreal after we waited for any update on that movie for so long. And well, if you really want to feel old, right now is the 10-year anniversary of Five Nights at Freddy's as an entire franchise. A decade of games, books, comics, and more game theories than should have been possible. And in celebration, FNAF creator Scott Cawthorn Coffin has gone all out. There's been new announcements, new games, a new interactive novel, a new interview, and even a freaking crossover with Dead by Daylight. But most importantly, and the reason we're once again talking about one of Game Theory's favorite franchises on our film channel for the second week in a row, Scott also released 4 individual pages from the script for Five Nights at Freddy's 2, the upcoming sequel to the movie. But there's a catch. Only one of these pages is real and is actually in the script. Only one of these pages is in the movie. Loyal theorists, this is a challenge. Scott looked at the community of overthinkers that he's gathered for FNAF and challenged us to figure out which one of these is actually real. You know what, Scott? I'm not scared. I will personally take on your challenge and I'll figure out which one of these pages is legit and which ones are just mimic knockoffs. And let me tell you, friends, after digging through them, comparing them to what we know about FNAF lore and looking at these pages through the lens of the rules and etiquette of screenplays, I did it! I know which one of them is real and it tells us so much about where the FNAF movie franchise is going. With just this one page, I believe we can map out not only the plot of FNAF 2, but also FNAF 3. Get your animatronic suits ready, friends, as we take a
Ow,
flight.
fucker. I knew that. I did it. I did it anyway.
It's been about a year since the original movie hit theaters, and we all did the Leo DiCaprio pointing meme when Matt popped up. Let's do a recap so we're all on the same page of where things ended up. Five Nights at Freddy's follows
Release me from your glue.
a young man struggling to take care of his younger sister Abby and keep down a steady job. His parents aren't around anymore, and he has nightmares about his brother Garrett, who was kidnapped and killed when Mike was just a child. Mike gets a job as a night security guard at a local Chuck E. Cheese ripoff called Freddy Fazbear's that's been shut down for years, since several kids went missing from the building. Over the course of a week, Mike meets a police officer named Vanessa and realizes that the pizzeria's animatronic mascots are haunted by the ghosts of those missing kids, and they want Abby to join them as a ghost in the restaurant. Oh, and also the man who gave Mike this job in the first place, William Afton, he not only was the founder of the pizzeria and creator of the animatronics, but he also murdered the kids and Mike's brother. Mike, Abby, and Vanessa team up, free the ghost kids from Afton's control, and Afton is killed by a malfunctioning animatronic Springlock suit. But he warns that I always come back. And more or less, that's the movie. So what are the new pages we're dealing with? Let's go over them one by one. The first page has Abby talking with a new animatronic called Toy Chica. The toy animatronics are improved versions of the characters from the original FNAF introduced in the FNAF 2 game. They were much more advanced than the original animatronics, with a facial recognition system and child protection software programmed into them that would protect kids from anyone the animatronics deemed dangerous. Back to the page, as Toy Chica and Abby are talking, Vanessa is being held in the pizzeria's storage room, forced to give out some sort of code. Toy Chica then relays that to Abby, who is typing it into a computer. Abby puts in the code, Toy Chica's eyes light up, and excitedly she says, "You did it, Abby! We are free!" If I were a betting man, this page is showing Abby being tricked by the animatronics into freeing them from some form of their child protection software, so they can move around and hurt anyone they like, even if they're not deemed a predator or dangerous. The second page, however, is completely different. Here we are introduced to General Everly and Captain Nelson, two completely original characters who aren't in the game. The pair have a conversation in some sort of conference conference room about a robotics project. Here, General Everly vents his frustration that the government funded Fazbear Entertainment, completely dumbfounded that they would get in bed with a pizza place. When it's pointed out that Fazbear Entertainment is way ahead on animatronic tech, Everly lashes out that this sort of technology shouldn't be tested on kids' entertainment, and that what Fazbear gave them wasn't animatronic tech, but instead observable effects of unobservable energy exchanges. The third page starts with a conversation between Abby and Mike about a book where a boy gets sick with a very contagious disease called scarlet fever. The boy has plushies that he loves dearly, but they have to be burned because the scarlet fever has likely attached to the plushies, making them very dangerous. Apparently, Mike and Abby are dealing with some weird plushies themselves, and Mike realizes that Abby is saying that these plushies are dangerous too, just like the book. They should be burned. Later, he calls up Vanessa and tells her to suit up in dark clothing because they have a job to do. Finally, the fourth page sees an unnamed man with two kids, Darren and Gemma, as they enter an abandoned Freddy's Pizzeria. Here, the man turns on a carousel and leads the kids to the center of the carousel, where there's a hidden staircase descending into the darkness below. The three of them then descend into it, their fates unknown. So, which one is real? Well, all of them have interesting ideas and bits that hint at them being real, but some are less realistic than others. To start, let's tackle the one I think is least likely to be the real page, the second page. This is the one where a group of army officers are talking about the animatronic tech that Fazbear Entertainment is developing. Now, there are a lot of fun little secrets hidden on this page. The general calls Fazbear Entertainment a circus, for instance. A circus as in it's a joke. This is a nice reference
Hi,
to one of the
sweetheart. You wanna go outside?
community, speculating about its origins as Fazbear's traveling circus in the 1970s. But despite that, this page is clearly fake for a few reasons. The first big reason is that this is introducing an element of the franchise that they've never used before.
Oh, baby.
Military. The strategy the FNAF movies seem to be taking is approaching the series as a whole, the games, books, whatever, throwing it all in a blender and then shaping their story from the resulting Fazgame. While Afton did talk to some supervising body during the opening cutscene of Sister Location where they asked about some of his design ideas,
With all due respect, those aren't the design choices we were curious about, Mr. Afton.
saying that this is a government entity is a stretch. Afton has never been said to have government backing in the games. It would require a lot of explanation for how and why this is even a thing, and we would need to spend so much time to explore what this meant for the story. And frankly, it just expands this franchise way too far, way too quickly. We're suddenly going from one crazy guy in a pizzeria to an entirely government-funded operation. This isn't a movie too. This feels like something you do in like movie horror, right before you jump the shark and go to space. Now, trying to parse all of this FNAF lore out might feel like it's driving me crazy. I mean, I'm not crazy, right? But something that is crazy is that I did an exclusive mini-theory over on Throne Talk with the sponsor for today's episode, Game of Thrones Legends. Yeah, you heard that right. I did a mini-theory live in person at Throne Talk, which you can go watch right now along with the rest of the special presentation celebrating the new puzzle RPG, Game of Thrones Legends. It's like a pre-recorded late-night talk show, but all about the nerdy goodness of Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, and, of course, Game of Thrones Legends. Other creators at the event were the Man-at-Arms team from Ami, the Easter Egg Masters over at Screen Crush, and the Master Strategists at Heartbeat,
what's
all
up?
hosted by the lovely folks over at Deerstalker Pictures. This whole opportunity was surreal, and I can't thank Game of Thrones Legends enough for making this happen.
Wanna go outside?
They flew me out to Northern Ireland to film at the Game of Thrones studio tour, and they shut the whole place down for us, and we got an exclusive look at one of the places where they filmed the actual show. They had real sets, real props, and real costumes from the show here, and I might have gotten just a little emotional seeing them in person. I mean, the Iron Throne was right there. I also ate dinner with a White Walker, which was just so fun and weird and cool. And all of these awesome details from the show were lovingly recreated in Game of Thrones Legends, which has tons of different champions from across both Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. You can make a team of your favorite characters from across the whole Game of Thrones timeline, from Jon Snow and Criston Cole to Daenerys and Rhaenyra. There's so much to talk about with this game that you can find out over at Throne Talk, but it is genuinely great. I've actually been pulling it out during my breaks to keep building up my fortress. I almost have Ned Stark unlocked, and I really want him for my team. If you want to learn more about Game of Thrones Legends and watch that exclusive mini-theory I made, please go to Throne Talk over on Stalker Pictures YouTube channel. And remember to download Game of Thrones Legends by clicking the link in the description or scanning the QR code on screen. If you do, you'll get 50 gold, 3,000 food, and a daily summon token to start out with. And hey, you might see me in the game because I can't stop playing. But anyway, thanks one last time to Game of Thrones Legends for sponsoring this episode, and let's hop back into the mystery of the FNAF movie pages. But more importantly, this interaction happens on page 18, which means it takes place at a weird point in the movie. But to understand why, we first have to talk about movie structure. See, a movie is generally broken down into 5 parts: the cold open, acts 1 through 3, and then the resolution. It starts with the cold open, which immediately drops you into the world and acts as a hook to get you engaged with the story. In FNAF 1, this is the security guard at the start of the film getting hunted by the animatronics. Then there's Act 1, where the main characters are introduced and the conflict of the story is discovered. In FNAF, we see this with Mike losing his job and needing to take the gig at Freddy's so he can take care of Abby. Screenwriters are generally on one page of the script is equal to about 1 minute of screen time. To be clear, this isn't written in stone. A lot of scripts are much longer than the movie's final runtime, and a lot of long movies are made from super short scripts. The minute per page idea is like the pirate code. The code is what we call guidelines, the actual rules. It mostly applies, enough that we can use it here. So, following this rule, at page 18, that means that this scene with the military would be happening somewhere like 15 or 20 minutes into the movie, making it a scene smack dab in the middle of Act 1. That makes no sense, considering everything else that Act 1 of this movie needs to do. It needs to tell us what Mike, Abby, and Vanessa have been up to, show us their new dynamic, introduce us to the new conflict. It has a lot of heavy lifting it needs to do, so cutting away to the military drama here makes zero narrative sense, so we can safely eliminate this page. The act structure also lets us eliminate another page, the first one, where Vanessa is being forced to give Chica a code and Abby is typing that code into a computer. Now, the concept of this scene, Vanessa being tortured to give up valuable information and Abby being tricked into using it to free toy animatronics, that could absolutely be in a movie like this. It's in character and the conflict makes sense. However, the placement of the scene makes no sense. This page is labeled as page 25, meaning that it would be roughly 23 to 28 minutes into the movie. That would place it either at the middle or end of Act 1. But that's way too fast for something like this to happen, and let's go over the rest of story structure to understand why. Normally, Act 2 of a story sees the characters encountering obstacles that stop them from getting what they want or need. It's also generally the lowest point for the main character. In the first FNAF movie, this is where Mike is trying to discover the secrets of Freddy's and agrees to let the animatronics have Abby. Act 3 sees the big climax of the story where all of the conflict is resolved. Mike, Abby, and Vanessa fight Acton and get the animatronics to turn on it. And finally, there's the resolution, which is a brief period of calm where a new status quo is established. Mike and Abby are living happily and visit a recovering Vanessa in the hospital. What's being described here in this page with Abby, Vanessa, and Toy Chica, it could absolutely happen in this movie at the end of Act 2, much further than page 25. Think of everything that needs to happen before this scene. We have to get reintroduced to the main characters, meet the new toy animatronics, have the child protection software be explained, have Toy Chica build up a relationship with Abby, and Vanessa needs to be captured. That can all happen by the end of Act 2 or into Act 3, but Act 1? No way. See, I really appreciate this page because it's really clever. The scene itself is realistic, and you do input codes into the baby animatronic in the sister location game. Abby is connected to Baby, so the ideas line up, but the timeline just doesn't. So, good troll, Scott. And so, that leaves us with just 2 pages left. And honestly, both of these are pretty valid options. Just as a reminder, these are the pages where Abby and Mike are talking about the dangerous plushies, and where an unnamed man is leading 2 kids into a hidden room below the pizzeria. Both of these pages take place at reasonable points in the movie. The Mike and Abby scene is on page 58, so roughly an hour into the movie in the middle of Act 2. That's the perfect point for this sort of story revelation and the setup for an action set piece like we see on this page. Likewise, the man taking the kids into a secret room is on page 4, so right at the beginning of the movie. It makes perfect sense because this is exactly the sort of scene you'd want for a cold open to hook you into the story. Who is this guy? What's this secret room? What's gonna happen to these kids? It's good stuff. And nothing completely unrealistic or ridiculous happens on either one of these pages that disqualifies them, like the military page. Like the cold open page is pretty standard killer luring kids into a dangerous place horror cliche, and there absolutely would be rooms hidden under an Afton pizzeria. We've seen that exact setup in other FNAF content like Sister Location and the Twisted Ones novel. As for the plushies, well, weird haunted plush babies are present in the Help Wanted series, and they attack the player, so they would be dangerous in the movie. The first FNAF movie also had the Balloon Boy toy that was basically a haunted, sentient toy, just like these plushies would be, so there's already precedence for this in the film universe. In fact, the Balloon Boy is like one of the movie's biggest hanging threads. They'd probably want to resolve that. And all of that's without mentioning that the plush babies would further the connection between Abby and the baby. Oh, and also there's Plush Trap 2, which is just straight up a plush version of the main villain that is alive and dangerous. I don't think that's what they're talking about here in the movie, but I just wanted to point it out because it's a relevant detail. But with all of that being said, there is one thing that gives away the answer here. In the cold open page, there's mention of a carousel. This is where the man takes the children and reveals the hidden room, but it's shown to have 7 animatronics on it. A brown bear, a blue bunny, a yellow chick, a pirate fox, a gator, a wolf, and a hippo. In the games, there are only really 2 carousels that we know of. The one in FNAF 2 and the one in Help Wanted 2, and between them, the only characters that show up on them are Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and Balloon Boy. Never a hippo, wolf, or alligator. Now, that's not to say they couldn't bring in other FNAF characters to fill in those spots, but it would be weird and it would make the timeline get real funky. Like, the hippo is absolutely referring to Mr. Hippo, an animatronic that first appeared in FNAF 6. It doesn't really make sense for Mr. Hippo to be here with the original FNAF animatronics, but I guess it's not impossible. In FNAF 3, the purple mask of a character that is almost certainly Mr. Hippo shows up in the Happiest Day minigame, implying that he could exist at the same time. But the other characters, though, are just much harder to justify. Now, for the Gator, I think all of our minds immediately jump to Monty Gator from Security Breach, but it is possible that this is referring to some other character, maybe? In The Man in Room 1280 story, the book's version of the Golden Freddy spirit, Andrew wears an alligator mask, so one existed that early in at least some version of the FNAF timeline. And additionally, going back to the Happiest Day minigame, there's a green mask that could also be an alligator. But considering that the other masks, the pink pig, the purple hippo, and the orange elephant line up way more with the mediocre Melodies characters, I believe that this mask is actually referring to the Happy Frog. The eyes on the sprite are even yellow like the circles around Happy Frog's eyes, so I wouldn't be comfortable saying that the gator on the carousel of the script page is referring to anyone else other than Monty. He's just the only one that makes sense. All that being said, though, the real outlier here is the wolf. The earliest wolf that we know of in the timeline is from the Twisted Ones, which is the book version of the FNAF 4 story, which features the Twisted Wolf animatronic. And we also know that there was a man-wolf character on a poster in FNAF 6. But why would either of those characters be on this carousel? That's a great question, and it really doesn't make sense. No, if this wolf is any character, it's almost certainly Roxy from Security Breach, which would also line up with Monty Gator. Regardless, having Roxy and Monty here is just weird. The first movie was not shy about mixing elements from various games, but something it kept very consistent was its animatronics. It didn't overcomplicate them or introduce too many. Its cast was pretty consistent with the one from the games. So why on earth would they bring in Mr. Hippo from FNAF 6 and 2 characters from Security Breach with the original FNAF animatronics? Especially given just how much attention Scott pays to the tiniest details in his work. It just doesn't make any sense, and why I think that this page is a fake. Oh, and also, one of the kids on this page literally says the words, "This is a fake," so another subtle tip off there. Very cheeky Scott. So, there you have it. That leaves us with page 3 as the one I believe is the real page from the FNAF 2 movie. But we're not done. Now that we've concluded that this one is real, what does that tell us about the movie itself? Well, the main thing that stuck out to me about this page, beyond the fact that we're apparently getting haunted plushies or something like that, was the book that Mike and Abby were talking about. In case you need a reminder, on this page, Abby is talking about a book where a little boy has plushies that he loves, but after he gets sick with scarlet fever, he can't keep them. The disease is just so contagious that it might attach to the plushies and spread that way, so the plushies have to be burned. She then goes on to liken the book to the dangerous plushies that the gang is currently facing. Well, if the plushies from that book were so applicable to the current situation in this FNAF story, is there anything else from the book that would also apply? Well, Well, after some research, I was able to figure out that the book that they're talking about here is a classic known as The Velveteen Rabbit, written by Marjorie Williams. This story is told from the point of view of a plush rabbit toy given to a small boy as a Christmas present. The rabbit desperately wants to become real and is told that it's possible when a child loves you for a long, long time, not just to play with, but really loves you, then you become real. Over the years, though the boy gets other toys and presents that are more modern, he grows to love the rabbit plush and regards it as his favorite toy, treating it like it was a real rabbit. However, sadly, the boy is diagnosed with scarlet fever, a highly contagious disease. The boy takes the rabbit as he recovers, but when the boy is taken away to see other doctors, all of his possessions must be burned so that the scarlet fever to spread on his belongings. The night before the rabbit is to be burned, he reflects on the happy life he had with the boy and manages to shed a real tear. This summons a fairy that turns the rabbit into a real one for everyone to see, not just the boy, because the boy truly loved him. The next spring, the rabbit visits the boy, who is happy to see that the rabbit is real, alive, and living his best life out in the wild. I mean, guys, come on. Just on the face of things, there are so many parallels between this story and FNAF. First of all, a story about a rabbit that wants to become real? Well, FNAF is a series all about a man obsessed with a rabbit costume who wants to be reborn. He wants to make his dead daughter come back, that sort of thing. Those themes line up so perfectly that it's scary. And even if you just want to talk about the movie universe, Abby loved the animatronics. She may want to help them become real by helping them find peace and move on to the afterlife. A darker interpretation could even focus on Mike here. We're pretty sure that his brother Garrett, who was killed by Afton in the previous movie, is going to come back in this movie as the puppet. Perhaps Mike will have a similar moment here like the boy and the stuffed rabbit, except in reverse. He may see the toy that resembles his real brother and be sad that it's trapped and try to work to free Garrett. But the biggest thing here is the use of fire in the Velveteen Rabbit. A parallel for the dangerous and contagious scarlet fever from the book in the FNAF universe may be Remnant. And one of the ways that the game says that you can destroy Remnant is through the use of fire, just like how the rabbit is said to be burned to get rid of any traces of scarlet fever. That may very well be the key to defeating the big bad of this movie and freeing whatever spirits are trapped in the pizzeria. If that's the case, that also tells us that the FNAF movie sequel is going to be incorporating elements of both the games FNAF 2 and FNAF 3, combining elements of
That's the part I needed with flying.
See, FNAF 3 is not exactly the sort of game that is easily adapted into an exciting film. It's just two characters alone in a building. But at the end of that story, Mike burns down the pizzeria to defeat Afton. That could be moved to the FNAF movie sequel, with Mike and Vanessa burning down Freddy's to release the spirits and destroy any remnant inside. It also opens the door for the series to immediately move on to a bigger adaptation of Sister Location as a way to finish off the movie series, all while mixing in elements of FNAF 4's dream sequences as backstory, maybe for Garrett. Honestly, after sitting here and just thinking about it, that arc makes so much sense. And after spending just way too much time trying to figure out which one of these pages is real, I just can't imagine a better path forward for these movies. But then again, Scott always manages to completely pull the rug out from under us, revealing a new trapdoor and deeper levels to the story than we could ever imagine, so maybe we'll never escape. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And cut. If you want to see what other hints about FNAF 2 we get from the novelization of the first movie, go check out our theory all about that.
Alrighty. What do you think of that smile? A nice smile? Alright. I'm gonna check the cat for a minute.
You can take them all from do to die. No, our doers still more die.
Marshall Spires hustle for the latest trends so that you don't have to.
Never mind, he's still outside.
My wild swing for the fences theory here is that this Super Mario movie is gonna be a musical. Fun fact, that song Peaches, yeah, that thing is now eligible for the Best Original Song Oscar. Academy Award-winning songwriter King Koopa has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Internet, it's a film theory. The show that definitely beat the obstacle course on the first try. The Super Mario Brothers movie came out, let me just say it was a blast. Was it high cinema? Kino, as the online say? No, obviously not. The pacing was a bit uneven, the random 80s pop song instruments just didn't work, and Peach's motivations for taking Mario with her on the adventure were weaker than a stack of Goombas. But darn it, if I didn't have a smile plastered across my face the second the GameCube jingle played as a cell phone rings, or when the brothers platformed their way through a 2D construction site, or when the DK rap kicked into high gear during Donkey Kong's WrestleMania entrance. So awesome. On that topic though, that was probably my biggest complaint about the movie. The creator of the DK rap isn't credited. Yeah, while all the other songs have their writers and musicians properly credited, the DK rap is just from Donkey Kong 64. Real classy there, Universal. I mean, I know Seth Rogen said,
Objectively, one of the worst rap songs of all time.
but that doesn't mean that the man behind this masterpiece, epic game composer Grant Kirkhope, should be overlooked. Artists deserve to be credited for their hard work, and that includes the DK rap, no matter what Seth Rogen thinks about it. And the snub was obviously enough to upset Grant, so here's what I propose, loyal theorists. Let's work together to change the Mario movie. If you have yourself a Twitter account, go and use that toxic platform to do some good today. Tweet at Universal, or specifically at Universal Pix, P-I-C-S, asking them to change the credits in the digital release of the Mario movie to include all of the proper credits for the writers and performers of the DK rap. And make sure you use the hashtag #SaveTheDKRap so we can get this puppy trending. If it gets enough attention, media outlets and YouTubers and streamers start making enough noise with this story, maybe Grant and everyone else who worked on this thing will get the credit they deserve for writing a song that so many people love, or at least me. I was so hyped when they played this. I will fully admit my bias here. I'm not usually the type to get really excited about nostalgic like Memberberry stuff, but man, that was an Easter egg I did not see coming, and it hit hard. But beyond the music,
I'm running into the eyeballs.
we all know what I
A real frog.
there to see.
In the way.
Let me tell you there, friends,
The
there was
jaws.
so much in this thing. We here at Theorist HQ actually have a ton of ideas, and we're definitely going to be diving further once it's available to scour frame by frame. So super jump on that subscribe button right now so you get notified of when all those episodes come out. But as of today, in true video game fashion, we're going to be speed running our way through 4 mini-theories that may just change the way you look at these core Mario characters forever. Today we're covering everything from Peach's mysterious origins and the twisted logic of the Mushroom Kingdom to the realities of the wider meta Mario-verse. So suck down a mushroom and design yourself a cart, friendos. Let's go! So let's kick things off with theory number 1. You cannot die in the Mushroom Kingdom. One subtle detail that I think most people overlooked in this new movie is how they visualize the damage that Mario is taking. Through all of the punishment that he takes in the Mushroom Kingdom, Mario comes away basically unscathed. For instance, in the arena battle against Donkey Kong, Mario gets rocked. He's grabbed, smashed, tossed, slammed, and made into the equivalent of plumber Play-Doh. And yet, his body reflects none of that damage. He is literally on the verge of passing out. There's not a scrape or bruise on him, either during or after the fight. Big deal, right? It's a Mario movie. What do I expect? It's not like they're gonna show the main character bleeding or something. Except that's exactly what they show us during the movie's final fight. During the final battle, all the characters are sucked back out of the warp pipe and launched into Brooklyn. And here we once again see Mario taking a lot of hard knocks, except this time his body is all the damage, complete with a black eye and a bruise on his cheek. I mean, these sorts of design choices aren't made casually, especially for big feature film collaborations between Teacup and Wreck-It Ralph. It's also not like Bowser was rougher with Mario out here than anything we saw happen inside the Mushroom Kingdom. There are multiple occasions where both Mario and Luigi probably should have died during their adventures. Adding to this idea, early on in the movie, we see Bowser use his flame breath on a disobedient Koopa, but instead of killing him, this act
7 people you were hanging on. My, there must be nothing online tonight. I'm so sorry. You're stuck with me.
What this tells us is that people's biology seem to act differently across the different worlds or kingdoms of the Mario universe. And that, for whatever reason, the Mushroom Kingdom is one where your spirit or living self is somehow contained within the bones of your body. What this tells me is that in the final act of the movie, as Luigi is lowered down into the pit of lava and nearly burns to death, what really would have happened if that scene had continued would have been him turning into a living skeleton rather than immediate and permanent death. Still a downgrade from fleshy human status for sure, but hey, at least it's not death. So take a chill pill there, Luigi. Death only appears to be permanent if it's out in the real world. Theory number 2. Did you notice the cavalcade of Nintendo references that are packed into this movie? Of course it is. Impossible not to notice them. There were so many in this thing that the new Rockstar's Easter egg video that breaks this puppy down is going to be longer than the actual movie. Some of my personal favorites, obviously the songs I mentioned earlier, like the DK rap, but there was also the Super Mario rap from their old TV show that was used in the commercial.
What the Mario Brothers did, plumbing?
All the construction signs, game Game & Watch characters on them. That's really fun. There's the shot of Mario versus Bowser framed like it's a KO in Super Smash at the end. And that moment that Mario defeats Bowser by launching him with his tail. A direct callback to Mario 64. But it was the non-Mario game references that got me the most interested. Mario has a toy Arwing model from Star Fox in his room. There's an F-Zero poster hanging from his wall. The Punch-Out Pizzeria is a big old nod to the boxing adventures of Little Mac, which is also fitting since Mario was the referee of that original game. There's also an Ice Climbers Easter egg on one of the awnings of the street in Brooklyn. There's the whole scene of Icarus, which we're going to talk about a lot more later. But to me, it's what isn't there that stands out the most. In a movie that's literally a Nintendo victory lap, crammed full of every IP they got, the omissions are telling. Did you notice the distinct lack of anything related to Zelda, Metroid, Pokemon, Kirby? Well, that tells me that Nintendo has carved those IP out to shop around. I suspect that according to the contract, anything that appears in this movie would have to have been committed to a production in partnership with Illumination. And since those are the main IP Illumination! Mario games, the whole thing begins with Mario and Luigi talking to Foreman Spike about their construction jobs and being part of the Wrecking Crew, and it all ends with Bowser's wedding where he wears the exact outfit from Mario Odyssey. Basically, this thing is giving you a complete picture of Mario across the years, beginning to end. And then they put in practically every power-up you want to see in this thing. Mushrooms, stars, fire flowers, sure, that's to be expected, but also mini mushrooms,
he's in.
Yuki suits, ice flowers, the freaking cat suit. That made me wonder, where could they possibly go next? When your first film is literally a highlight reel of 35 years worth of games, what else can you possibly include? Well, obviously, with Bowser temporarily out of commission, the next one has got to star Wario and our meme lord and savior Waluigi trying to nab Yoshi eggs from Yoshi's Island. That one seems like a no-brainer. Maybe throw some Koopalings in there for good measure. And after that, we're going to be taking a trip to space to explore some galaxies. Where finally, I'd expect we meet our last and most important character, Rosalina. And it's then we propose the third movie of the trilogy where will be revealed Peach's origin. Which then brings us to theory number 3, Peach is a star. During a scene in Act 2, as Mario, Peach, and Toad are on their way to try and recruit the Kong army against Bowser's invasion, the trio spend a field full of fire flowers. Mario and Peach use the opportunity to do some character development, telling each other and the audience about their backstories and motivations. And it's here that Peach reveals that she doesn't know where she's from. The only thing that she does know is that it's not the Mushroom Kingdom. It's here that we see her arriving in the Mushroom Kingdom.
What's wrong with you?
And then getting adopted by the Toads.
Come on, the box is clean!
Human from his world, but given the way Peach
What an
reacts.
asshole cat!
Doubt it. She just kind of softly smiles, turns away, looks up at the night sky, and says, "It's a big universe out there with a lot of galaxies." No, that right there isn't a giant neon billboard spelling out Fury Base. I don't know what is. So obviously, it seems like they're setting up some future films to explore Mario Galaxy stuff, and that stuff is going to be directly related to Peach's backstory.
He must have used the litter box and they got stuck to his ass for.
On this, but what if Peach is literally a humanoid star? One of the superstars that's somehow taken human form. Might sound like a stretch, but let's look at some of the evidence. If we look at that scene where baby Peach arrives in the kingdom, there's lots of little details that start adding to the theory. Firstly, Peach arrives out of a pipe that's constantly glowing. Like Mario, who arrives in a pipe that flashes as it spits him out, but then turns entirely dark. That right there tells me there's some really powerful magic on the other side of that pipe. And the most powerful thing that we see in this world are the superstars.
Oh, shit.
You know it, they glow, just like the pipe. Secondly, the skirt that baby Peach is wearing in the scene is covered in a repeating pattern of stars and moons. A character's design in an important flashback like this likely had input from everyone up the chain of command in both Illumination and Nintendo. So this detail is something that they 100% wanted in there. Thirdly, Peach is clearly powerful. Not only is she a capable warrior, but it also appears like she's always been powerful. That she was able to do the obstacle course that Mario struggled with on her first try. The only other time we see anyone as capable as her was Mario and Luigi have the power of the superstar at the end of the movie. Also, this is a bit of a minor point, but I figured I should mention it. We also see both baby Mario and baby Luigi in the film, and both of them have these weird little beady eyes. Basically just pupils without the white sclera around it. But baby Peach, her eyes are fully formed. They're big and they're blue and they have a giant sclera. Probably has more to do with being consistent with the already existing designs of the baby versions of these characters that we see in the video games, but it does certainly add more evidence to the Peach isn't human pile. The babies that we know are humans have eyes that look this way, and the babies that might not be human but might come from outer space look like this. Another big point here, when Peach first meets Mario, she excitedly asks him, "You're a human. You are a human, right?" Before commenting that she thought he'd be bigger and asking where he came from. But obviously that then begs the question, how does Peach know what a human is? For someone who grew up with a race of fungus, people think she was a literal infant, so yeah, piece of knowledge to have. The bigger issue here, though, is that kids lose their memories. At a certain point in childhood, usually around the age of 3 when they become verbal, they undergo what's known as childhood amnesia, a natural and gradual loss of memories from the first few years of life. In this scene, we see Peach using a pacifier, but also able to walk. Now, human babies begin walking anywhere between 10 and 18 months, and pacifiers can honestly hang around as long as parents are willing to let their kids use them. The long and short of this is that Peach in this scene is probably around the age of 2, and even if Peach were a human
what time is
and
it?
knew about it at this age, that knowledge would likely have been lost as part of the childhood amnesia
15
process.
minutes.
Instead, the knowledge
I'm
of
gonna take a picture of this guy until he gets set.
some
Let's
sort
see what
of
else is
innate
done.
knowledge that an intergalactic
Oh
traveler
yeah, Mickey Mouse should be ready for his next
someone who's
coat.
gotten a lot of knowledge about the different galaxies and the races that are contained therein. There's also a ton of evidence that we can actually bring in here from the games as well. In some truly ancient game theories that are almost 9 years old at this point, we talk about the origins and parentage of the character Rosalina, a space-traveling princess from the Mario Galaxy games, who is quite literally mother to the stars. Those theories are great, by the way. They hold up really well. They're old, but man, to this day they are some of my favorites that we've ever done. Anyway, to quickly summarize here, throughout Super Mario Galaxy, Rosalina reads from a storybook about a sad little girl in search of Aluma's missing mother. Though it's never explicitly stated, the story is likely about Rosalina herself. In the book, we see glimpses of Rosalina's mother, who looks an awful lot like Peach, and who also has herself Peach's earrings. We also see Rosalina's childhood castle, one that has itself the exact same silhouette as Peach's castle in most depictions. Symmetrical spires on the sides, and one large spire in the middle. Genetically, Rosalina's eye color, hair color, earlobes, and even her left-handedness would all match with Peach. And even the author of this storybook portion of the game has gone on record to say that his original intent was for Rosalina and Peach to be related. There's also the French translation of this story, which makes mention of a father's signature mustache. So isn't it suspicious then that the movie goes out of its way to further the connection between Peach and other galaxies? The filmmakers are outright doing everything in their power but spelling out Peach's Rosalina's mom in the night sky. Additionally, the captive nihilistic Luma Lee from the movie outright says, time, like hope, is an illusion. Another point is that old theory of iterative variants of the universe, the connection between Peach and the stars. I suspect that in movie 3,
Alright, I'm really tired. I'm gonna call it a night. Thank you guys for hanging around as long as you did. I'll be back probably tomorrow night or tomorrow afternoon with more of these weird creatures. I'm getting down to the bottom of the pile, unfortunate, because I haven't gotten any new product in. I got a few pieces, but not enough to cover 2 conventions back to back, so I'm completely gonna be fucked. But anyway, thank you for hanging out. I will see you probably tomorrow. Night, everyone.